Consider a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Thank you. Sean?
Commissioner Aaron's? Commissioner Gibbon?
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins?
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt?
Yes.
Commissioner Landine?
Yes. Go ahead and move on to the consent agenda.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Motion to approve by Schmidt. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Sean, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Aaron's?
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon?
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins?
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt?
Yes.
Commissioner Landine?
Yes. We have our opportunity for public comment. If there's anyone in the audience who'd like to address the board, come on up. All right, nobody is taking us up on that. So then we have our commissioner report. Any commissioners have anything they'd like to report for items not on the agenda?
I'd just like to mention Commissioner Poppins and I on July 1st did meet and did some interviews for the Airport Advisory Committee and Board that we're looking at. I think I found it very beneficial and informational in interviewing people that are interested about some of the concerns and both positive and negative about our airport. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that obviously we'll be selecting that community probably soon.
Sure, all right.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
just to report, I'll be leaving to go to a NACO conference on Thursday. So we'll bring back any and all information concerning our national association and maybe some news on how we can spend some of our money that we've been allocated to the relief fund, hopefully.
Commissioner question, will we be back for the next Tuesday meeting?
Yes.
all right. Anybody else? If not, we'll move on to regular business. Item 1. Who's handling that, Bill?
Good morning. You surprised me. We just walked in, so we got here in time. Okay, what I'm requesting is assistance for a hospital bill for someone who is a Lincoln County resident, lives in Sioux Falls, but in the Lincoln County side of the line. This lady, she kind of got hit hard by COVID. A year ago, when things happened back in March, when all that came down, she had been hospitalized for a couple of weeks, I believe, in a pretty severe case. And but that hospital stay was covered under the CARES Act because it was COVID related. And she's a self-employed person who had some complications from the COVID, had actually a couple part-time jobs, but because of her health and because of the economic situation, she wasn't really able to make much money last year. Well, she ended up in the hospital again later on in the year, but it was not, it wasn't covered by the CARES Act. It wasn't, I don't know if they call it COVID-related enough to be covered, because we did check to see if that it could be, and it was not. It was, they diagnosed it as something different. And so that's the one we're looking at. And it's, fortunately for finances, it's not a big bill to begin with, a little over $6,000, but the DRG or Medicaid rate that the county would pay is really low for this diagnosis. So all that Lincoln County would pay out for this claim is $323.70 on a over $6,000 hospital bill. And that rate comes from the Department of Social Services Medicaid office in Pierre. So they're the ones that calculated the rate. She did have some money last year from unemployment. That has ended. She didn't have health insurance, and because of her low income, she wasn't up to the level to meet the qualifications for the Affordable Care Act. For a single person, you had to make a little over $12,000 a year. and she wasn't up to that level, so health insurance wasn't an option for her either. So, plus she has no other resources, she's not a veteran, she's not a tribal member, all those type of things, so kind of because of those reasons, we're asking that we help her out and pay for this hospital bill, get it wiped off the table and, for relatively low cost. Questions?
Anybody have any questions? If not, I'd consider a motion.
Is there a case number for this that I can refer to?
Yes, 112041.
Move for approval, Madam Chair.
Got a motion and a second for $323.70. Any further discussion? If not, Sean, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes. We'll move on to item number 2.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Jim.
Good morning, Jake.
Good morning. I'm just seeking authorization to approve mapping software for our public safety offices. This new software is connected with our current CAD software. It would help us exponentially as we'll have one software to manage our mapping along with our CAD and CFS information. So the one fact about it is that it's $48,288.15. And the 911 center, the 911 coordination board actually gave us money of $44,703.16. So it cost Lincoln County $3,584.99.
Move to approve.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you. Got a motion and a second by Commissioner Aaron's. Any further discussion? If not, Sean, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jake.
Move on to item 3.
Item 3 is a second reading and second public hearing to consider the adoption of an ordinance of Lincoln County, South Dakota titled An Ordinance to Regulate Medical Cannabis Within Lincoln County.
Morning, Bill.
Good morning. This is the second reading of the ordinance. I did go in there and make the changes that was discussed, starting with defining daycares in the definition that it has to be more than 21 children within the home. That would be a registered welfare agency under the statutes and would require basically a larger commercial enterprise. So those are easily identifiable. I did remove the holidays from this draft so that they would be able to sell or be open on that date. Removed the number of license and also changed it so that there would be allowed vertical integration. So if you had a single license at a single location, you could go ahead and run all of the different facilities.
Is there a separate fee then for each?
It would not be a separate fee, it'd be for one location is what the license would be for. And at the moment, it's still set at $175,000 a year. That would be over 2 years, paid 50% each year. And the renewal is still set at the moment at $10,000 a year. There's the other provision that I did place in here because I don't know what the Supreme Court is going to do, would be that medical marijuana facilities would be able to sell recreational marijuana if it becomes legal. If it becomes that, I have another ordinance, and I would be suggesting that you review it, which would be, you have the ability to ban all recreational marijuana facilities in Lincoln County. And so if you would do that, but leave the option that so long as the medical marijuana facilities went ahead and complied and had a license from the Department of Revenue under that statute, then they would be able to do that. Otherwise, you cannot license recreational marijuana facilities under the statute, but you do get to regulate them, and you do get to deal with all the planning and zoning issues and all the rest of it, but there is no income from it. for the counties. So that would be something that I would ask you to take a look at, and this is just preemptively setting that up in case you wish to do that. So those were the changes I think we discussed, and that is what's being proposed here. Do you have any questions?
Bill, in our planning and zoning ordinance, I think we still have, looking at it here, I know this doesn't affect the licensing, but I think what we're gonna have to do is put the temporary ordinance back on the agenda again to make the changes with regard to vertical integration, because I think our current zoning ordinance says that a facility may not operate on the same site as a cannabis testing facility or a cannabis cultivation facility. So I think we've got to harmonize the two
Okay.
moving forward. That was pointed out to me by, and somebody call me this morning and say that. And then I think that's section 703. And then in section, yeah. So I think those are the, we've just got to harmonize our zoning ordinance to go along with our licensing ordinance. One of the other things I heard feedback on was the fee. I heard a tremendous amount of input on the fee. And I looked at what other states and other counties around the country are doing, and this would put us in probably the highest fee of any county or state out there. So I'm gonna support lowering the fee, still breaking it up into the two different, like North Dakota does. But I'm gonna wanna see an increase on the back end of the annual renewal fee for all the same reasons I said already. And I think it'd be cost prohibitive for some small businesses who wanna get involved in this to come up with $175K over 2 years. That's what was expressed to me. At first, I thought it was reasonable, but then last week when Toby came in here and said, we don't actually have to hire new FTEs to be the inspectors, well, I guess that kind of answered one of the questions for me then, that reduces some of our cost. And then I think he also said a certain percentage amount of the application fee and a building permit pays for those inspectors. So that eases some of my concern with regard to that. And then also, I got a call from a couple state legislators on a number of topics, and what they're talking about doing is introducing legislation this year, which is a long, arduous process, of course. But they want to bring back, because there's no sales tax to the counties, what their proposal is, and this is on the IM26 committee, what they're going to propose is having a certain portion of sales tax come back to the counties to help us recover law enforcement and planning and zoning cost. And that's not, obviously not in state law yet, but it's what the legislature is going to be considering. So I guess for all those reasons, I'm now coming down off of that 175,000 as being reasonable. So I guess I'm gonna support pushing that downward a little bit.
What's your initial thought on the fee?
Well, you know, we would definitely be an outlier at anything above 100,000. So I don't want it to be, just set an arbitrary number here, but I do think we need to get sub 100, similar to North Dakota, and then break it up into 2 years. You know, or break it up into 2 installments. Once at the time you file your application, and then at the other time when you want to go into business or get your occupancy permit. You know, whether that's 2 calendar years, I mean, most of the time it's just a couple months, I would think. But, I mean, mean, I would probably set 90,000 as that dollar amount based upon some of the back and forth, and then cut it into two different chunks, 45,000 and 45,000.
And then what would you, on the back end, what do you think on the renewals?
Yeah, on the annual renewal fee, I would do 2.5% of gross or not adjusted, off gross income.
Have a scale like that for individual businesses? I think it would have to be a fixed number, no matter what their sales volume is.
I would have to check on whether, I'm afraid the state would consider that a sales tax and in competition with them.
Well, let's not do that then. Let's not fight the state.
I prefer not to, because for us, that's like fighting the federal government for the state, so.
Right. Well, I do think we need to capture some of the revenue on the back end in order to pay for some of these expenses, including potential law enforcement expenses. And if we don't have, and planning and zoning expenses, and if we don't have legislation that ultimately gets passed and signed by the governor, we're gonna need to be able to have some kind of revenue stream that allows us, because it's an unfunded mandate, and I don't want the unfunded mandate to harm property taxpayers. You know, everybody ought to be able to win in this situation. It shouldn't put any stress on property taxpayers, number one. And then number two, the industry ought to be able to afford to be able to make this happen without causing any harm to the taxpayers. So that's what I want to see happen. So I think the annual renewal fee probably has got to come up from the 10,000 to like 20,000. There just has to be a way that we've got to be able to pay for the unfunded mandate.
And I'm with you on that. I'm just wondering if somebody just does medical, let's say Amendment A, the Supreme Court makes a decision about that. First, in my mind, the medicinal renewal fee should be less than a recreational renewal fee. So if, depending on how that plays out, does that make sense? I mean, I don't think the medicinal sales are gonna be, through the roof. I don't know if that's gonna be that profitable in and of itself. So,
And there is some time here, because the way it's written, and the way the ordinance is for planning and zoning, is that the state has to have their rules and everything adopted in place, and we also have, because we're probably gonna get closer to October for having this all in place before somebody's able to apply. So there could be adjustments as we go down the road before we get there. Once we start issuing a license, that'll be a separate matter. Because we really don't want people operating under two set of rules. But I think the fee structure can be adjusted along the way as well. So.
Bill, tomorrow we have the second meeting of this group of Minnehaha, Lincoln, and the city, talking about putting together kind of a ordinance that may be somewhat unified in its approach. And we have our final meeting, I think, on the 20th.
21st.
Our 21st. If you pass this ordinance, is that flexible enough so that if we were able to find a combined ordinance that would suit all three entities, that we could modify ours if we pass this one?
You could repeal it and adopt the other one if you wish to, so long as we haven't started to issue license under it. It gets a little more complicated once we start to issue license,
Yeah.
because we don't want two different schemes. If you wish to make some more adjustments to this, we could also reschedule it for later in. But we are into the point now where,
You should have something on your book.
yes.
The other part's been interesting. We talk a lot about licensing, and, I'm not in disagreement with Commissioner Aaron's on the lowering the fee. That is pretty steep. And whether it's 90,000 or 100,000, it's minuscule. The big thing is that I don't think that medical marijuana is the cash cow people think it is. because it's in other words, to me, it's just a prelude to getting to have a license to sell or recreational cannabis. Because I don't, not everybody is carrying their medical card with them. I don't know if it's 7 to 10% of the population can utilize that. So the market isn't as huge as what we think it is. But we better get ready for this. My question is another one. If the Supreme Court says that the law is unconstitutional, what does that do to this whole process? Does medical continue on, but recreational is now thrown out and now have to go through another referendum or vote?
I would say, an easy way to say is that medical marijuana would be similar to a prescription that you have to have for the doctor. Because you can have an opioid a doctor prescribes and it's legal. If you go out and buy it on the street, it's a felony. So for marijuana, it would still be illegal to have it unless you had a medical marijuana card.
Okay.
The statute, the way it's set up, if a person could have got a card and didn't get a card, and you get a doctor to sign off on it, is a defense. So it makes it very difficult to prosecute marijuana offenses at this point in time. If it's under 3 ounces, if they're not selling it, not distributing it. So it would be similar to the way we'd enforce prescription medications.
Okay, thank you.
Bill or Commissioner Schmidt, the Supreme Court's decision will only affect recreational.
Yeah, it won't affect medical.
Yeah, it won't affect medical, and I don't think that would affect, Supreme Court's decision wouldn't affect our planning here at the county level.
So what are your thoughts, Commission? I mean, do you want us to do this today?
My
And then we can amend it going forward if we need to?
we schedule this as another public hearing, so I'm gonna ask you to take input on that. And then afterwards, if there's changes you wanna make to it at this point, I'd ask you to do it by vote and make the changes. And then if you're satisfied with it, you can adopt it today. And then, of course, at any point in time, we can come back and revisit it and make changes as we go.
I think we need to come down on the fees, right-size the fees, but then I think we need to move forward after that.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
And what is the motion?
I would ask you to hold off on
Okay,
taking any of that until you allow the public to come forward and have their
Yeah,
input.
of course.
all right.
And then
gotcha.
you can have your deliberation, and if you hear things from the public that you think you'd like to make alterations, then I think this would be the time to do that.
Yeah, I know I've received calls, so I think there is folks who want to say their piece on this and have a good discussion about it and may enlighten the commission.
So with that, I'm gonna allow folks that want to come up and address the board on either side of this issue, but I am going to limit you to 5 minutes. And just please state your name and address.
Ned Horsted, 27058 Southeastern Avenue, Sioux Falls. Thanks for having me. I am also the executive director of the Cannabis Industry Association, representing the businesses, hopeful business owners as we launch this new industry. I appreciate the commission's consideration of cutting that fee that was placed, just a copy of the liquor fee. And just based on the comments that you all just had, I agree that the fee is going to be significantly too high. You see, even close to the 6 figures. I'll actually pass out an article from the Cannabis Business Times that goes state by state what other fees are in case you haven't seen all of them. But anytime you get to that high fee amount, you have unintended consequences. You look at states like Florida, Illinois, Michigan, North Dakota even, very high license fee. All that happens is you invite in giant corporate cannabis. It pushes out the little guy. There's no chance for, blue collar workers or any hopeful business owner that is not a large cap investor to start a business. Here's another one. The second handout I know you're all aware of, but I just printed out the two sections of IM 26, South Dakota Codified Law 3420G, which is, it talks about reasonable fee, so under rules promulgation. And I don't know if you caught the Department of Health's teletown hall that they had last week, but there was some allusion there by the Secretary of Health that anything beyond a 5K fee at the local level may be unreasonable. I tend to agree with that. It's in the text of the law. I think you let the free market figure this out. I understand the county's concern that you don't want a lot of extra costs, but if this is less than one FTE, I don't know what the average fee to hire someone in the county is, but you get fees when you do a building permit, you get fees when you do inspections, you get all sorts of different fees. I don't want this to be a cost to the property owners in the state or in the county. My taxes went up, as everyone's did, in excess of 10%. So I don't want this to be an additional cost, but to Commissioner Landine's point, this is not, medical marijuana is not a cash cow. If you want to put the industry over the barrel on this sort of thing, wait for rec. That's fine. These are patients, they're sick people. All of this increases the cost of goods significantly. And again, if you have it too high, you're just going to invite in giant cannabis, and it'll kind of lock out the little guy. So I would recommend keeping that fee, that application fee, no more than $5,000. If you do the math, it doesn't take too many of those applications to add up to a whole FTE in the county. And I think that's all I have, but I'm here for questions, or I can answer any questions that you might have.
Ned, how many applicants do you think Lincoln County would have? I know that's just total speculation.
Sure.
But I do know that there are some numbers out there that suggest in the first year, South Dakota could issue up to 2,500 cards. Some people say it could issue up to 5,000 cards. If you kind of prorated that to the different areas around the state, you can kind of do the math. I mean, because I'm tracking what you're saying with regard to you could get your FTEs paid for the number of dispensaries. Of course, that requires then, a belief on our part that that will actually happen based on the numbers. How many different applicants do you foresee happening in Lincoln County because of that?
Clarification, you're talking about business applications or medical card applications?
Good question. Both.
Okay. Medical card applications would be pretty difficult to figure on a county basis. One thing about the law that there is reciprocity with other states. So people that come in, from Iowa or whatever, that's what makes that piece very difficult. From a business licensing standpoint, a lot of it just depends on what happens in today's meeting and what that fee gets set at. Again, 6 figures I think is unreasonable. The other thing to keep in mind here is there are 4 different license types to be had. So if you're looking at a full vertical integration, you can take at least 3 of those: the cultivation, the cultivation, processing or product development, and then dispensary retail. So you'd be getting 3x fees on one location, assuming vertical integration is okay, which I think we established last meeting that would be all right. Hard to say. I would imagine most of these are going to happen within municipalities. And then, of course, Commissioner Schmidt's working with the city of Sioux Falls on the banned joint zoning jurisdiction. Take maybe it's really hard to say. If you get 2 vertical integrations, there's 6. So 6 times 5, you've got 30K, which I imagine is a good percentage of the way to a full FTE in the county.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I had people from the industry tell me that when we came out with our original proposed ordinance of 11, which was just kind of a placeholder number, they didn't think we'd even get that far.
Yeah.
we're doing no caps. But I think just in terms of the actual business climate, we're not gonna get there. And so this kind of drives my belief that, in order to not shift the burden to the property taxpayer, we're gonna have to have a higher than $5,000 fee per applicant in order to normalize or equalize that dollar amount that the county could face as a cost of having to regulate it. That's where I'm coming from.
Understand. Do you know what the expected cost of this would be? I imagine you already have people in place for all the inspections that also come along with fees, right?
Yeah, it was good to hear from Toby last week that he said, we don't have to hire anybody for the inspections. So that was good to hear. I think that presses the price down. I don't know whether we'll need to have another licensing FTE in place or not. Or whether the auditor's office can just handle it on their own.
Sure.
I just don't know. The other unknown, though, is clearly the law enforcement piece. Even though it's medical, I went to the State Bar Convention. There was a Rapid City police captain who gave a presentation at the bar convention. He had 10,000 different questions as to how medical would be, how law enforcement would be impacted by medical. And the whole time I'm sitting up there saying to myself, you've got to start looking at this through the lens of regulation as opposed to law enforcement when it comes to the medical piece. But I think there's legitimate concerns on the part of law enforcement what's going to happen here. What the cost is, I don't know. I wish I did.
And since the public is here, what constitutes inspection? What will the county have to inspect?
Standard, not a lawyer disclaimer here, but I don't think that the county would necessarily need to inspect much themselves. Like the state is tasked with doing a lot of this. How much they pass on to, your employees at the county level, I'm not certain. And again, some of this is up in the
So
air.
the state would inspect the quality of the material that was being sold, correct? Or its content and for.
Technically, that would be a testing lab, the way that, and just full view here, the industry association, I'm sending out a press release as we speak. We're getting stakeholders together in Chamberlain, so we're getting everyone from all over the state. Our feedback to the Department of Health is due on Friday. So we're figuring a lot of this out. As we've torn through the rules that they've developed, it seems that private testing companies would have an individual regulatory, they would be responsible for it more than anyone else in terms of how much THC is in the product, does it have pesticides, blah, 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 blah. So
The state would hire those private companies, correct?
those private companies are usually paid for by the industry. So you would have growers or dispensaries making those tests, which is why it's critically important that we get the right things in place to make sure that, the right processes are there, since it's a pseudo-regulatory body that's not, a public entity. So we're figuring that out.
Bill, will you come back up for a second? Question. So the way we've got this set up now, are these gonna be conditional use applications, or are they gonna be special permitted uses? Where I'm coming from is if there's an application fee, to me that is different than a license fee.
Yes.
So it makes sense to me to have the application fee itself be fairly low, because I don't want, somebody to be paying, even $5,000 necessarily if that's money gone if the application's not approved. So,
Did write into it that if the application fee comes in, it's not approved, it's refunded.
the whole thing is refunded?
When it was $175,000, that's the way it was written.
What is the amount of time that gets spent in a typical process for like a liquor license? How much time does our people spend processing that? And is that also, when they send in their fee, is that totally refundable if they don't get that? How does that work?
We haven't had anybody do the full liquor license fee since I've been here. But it would probably take, because we do the hearings, so there's 2 hearings, or the public hearing and the first reading, and then there's the advertising of the hearings. So cost is probably in the upwards of $500 for just the advertising. And then depending on how much backtracking we have to do on it, there's probably at least an hour of time spent on the application.
I mean, that's where I'm coming. I mean, I think maybe not all of it would be refundable, but maybe everything but $1,000.
We could go ahead and just change it so that where it says it's refundable, all but costs, county's costs, so publication, time on it, then we could figure it as we go. So we could change it that way.
I think it'd be better just to do a flat fee, because how do you track the time? So that
No, yeah, I would just say 1,000 of it is non-refundable
Okay.
if it's not approved on whatever we decide the fees are.
I like that because it also keeps giant corporations from coming in and throwing, 100 applications at your people. All right. Yeah, that I think is a decent idea. Normally I'd be for refunding everything, but I think that's perfectly reasonable and helps solve the problem that you have with cost of the county that is not reimbursed.
So I'm just looking at North Dakota, for example, they have a $5,000 application fee, and then they have the annual licensing fee. Does that licensing fee, when does that become due and payable in North Dakota? Do you know?
I'm not certain on that. I do know that North Dakota is one of the states that has very few businesses that are doing it. Cost is probably a little out of control, so I believe they've got 2.
But that's rec. I
Right.
mean, right?
I think that's med.
You think that's just med, the 110 grand?
Yeah, they're not legal up there yet.
They don't have recreation.
They
Correct.
don't. Well, then that is high probably if it's just medical.
Like the one example that I would point out is Colorado. So, and this happened pretty recently. I'm working with a consultant on the western part of the state. Kittrick Jeffries is his name. He's seen this in many states. He was working with some folks that were talking about, selling their dispensary license in Colorado or in Denver in particular. And, there's this separate private market where, much like the liquor licenses are here, people buy and sell those. And they're talking about $5 million to, move those around basically. The city of Denver opened up licensing again at the same, so not having caps, opened up licensing again for, $6,000. So guess what? All of the people that are making this extra money that the government doesn't see a bit of, now get to apply for $6,000 and go through a competitive process that way. I think that's the correct free market approach to this.
And Ned, is it your understanding that if you locate and sell in a unincorporated area, i.e. outside of city limits, the city sales tax won't apply? You'll just have to pay the 2% to the state of South Dakota?
That's my understanding. The tax piece, there's some unanswered questions there because, we don't tax medical products in the state.
And I think what the Department of Health said, or Department of Revenue said on that is and I agree with you, I don't think it should be taxed, but they are not going to define medical cannabis as
medical product.
As a medical product,
Right.
like Zoloft or, penicillin.
Sure.
So they're gonna tax it.
Mm-hmm.
That's my understanding. I'm trying to figure out what the sales tax piece is gonna be as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's a question mark for everyone still, but through rules promulgation process, hopefully we'll see some finality on that.
Right.
And again, like the elephant in the room is rec. What happens with rec? And there, if you all want to charge much larger application and licensing fees, I think that's perfectly reasonable. That's where money is made in the industry traditionally, is when it's open for adults 21 plus.
If recreational is approved, does it eliminate the need for medical, or is there a distinction between medical cannabis and recreational in terms of the potency?
Yeah, most usually it can be the same product. The difference is medical won't go away. It's still going to be important for like the tax piece. If there are people that there's even a sliding scale for the application card holders at the state level. So like for people that need a break, more inexpensive medicine, they would jump through the hoops, get their medical card, do all of that. So that's one circumstance. The other is for children. So children with seizures and that sort of thing obviously would not be covered under recreational use.
Thank you.
Well, and I'm not to complicate things either. I mean, I'm looking at Ohio on the handout that you gave us. I mean, they've got different levels, like a tiered system for the size of the facility and, you know, if it's however many square feet. The application fee is only $2,000 for up to 3,000 square feet of cultivation area, and then there's, you know, and then the fees go up from there depending on the size of the facility.
Yeah, I would prefer that to, you know, if you're talking about a six-figure fee, particularly for cultivators. There are different margins in each part of the industry here, but having one price tag, you know, call it 175, call it 100, whatever, you know, number you all come up with. It maybe should not be the same if you've got a 50,000 foot canopy versus, you know, someone that's trying to do this on a much smaller scale, think about it like a craft brewing type thing. You know, they're not mass producing stuff.
Right.
Less margin there, of course.
Well, that's why I'm wondering if we shouldn't have, I mean, if we're doing this vertical integration, if each would be some kind of an enhanced with a higher fee, depending on, and then the size.
I would recommend that it's clear in there that if you're going for vertical integration, it should be 3 separate fees. And if it's five each, you know,
Right.
you know, whatever number you come up with to cultivate it, to process it, to grow it. You know, you could do 2 out of 3, you could do 3 out of 3, but each of them carries their own separate license fee.
All right, well, we need to do something, so. Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to address the board during this hearing? You bet. Commissioners?
I think we could table it again for a period of time.
Bill, come up, what's problems with tabling this right now? If there is a problem with tabling it right now?
No, I think with the planning and zoning ordinance, it would be very difficult to locate a site at this point in time until the state gets done with what it actually, with its rules and have them all promulgated, because you have to have their application in order to apply for a permit under our current temporary ordinance. The rules have to be in place and everything else in order for them to finish out under planning and zoning. So we do have a time window, but the state has went ahead and made public their rules at this point. So they can go ahead and go to the Rules Committee in the legislature, and then 21 or 20 days after that, they will become in effect. So we don't have control of the timing of that, but we do have some time before we're probably facing our first facility. And of course, it's hard on people to make plans until they actually know what the rules of the game are.
Why don't we just set it for another public hearing 2 weeks from now? Then that way we can finalize it at that meeting.
I think the marijuana task force, the last one's planned on the 21st. So if we went at least out that far, at least the communities around here and what they're doing, everybody would know. And we could do it at that point.
If we're doing a public hearing, I'll need to send notice, correct?
Yes.
So if I send that today to print, last date of printing would be the 16th. So 10 days from there would be the 27th would be the earliest that we could do that, which isn't a meeting date. So the 3rd of August would be the next meeting that we could,
Well, we have the 29th, don't we?
that is
Are we
true.
meeting on July 29th?
Yeah.
Yes, we are. So we could do the 29th.
I would so move to make it the 29th.
Second.
Any further discussion? If not, Sean, will you call the roll?
Clarification, what is the motion again?
To table until the 29th.
To have another public
Yep.
hearing on the 29th.
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landian.
Yes. Bill, are you going to that meeting in the morning? Yes. Okay. Move on to item 4. The request for proposed lease. Mr. Golden?
I had been tasked with concerning the courthouse space needs and working on a lease. And there are two things I would like for the commission to give approval for. Is one, I think we should offer a simple RFP requesting land within the confines of Lincoln, or in confines of Canton, or they can be annexed. And that's something that has approximately about 87,000 square feet. And I think we should put that out for an RFP and see what other vendors and stuff may be out there. I'm already going to sit down and arrange a meeting with Mr. Johnson and his representatives and go through this. But I just think as a matter of public policy, and I think the bidding laws require that we should put this out there so that everybody knows what we're looking for, what the options are, and what the requirements are. So I'd like permission of the commission to go ahead and do that RFP. And I would bring to you at the next meeting and have it authorized, and then we'd publish it and see what takers are out there.
I would move to authorize our deputy state's attorney to put an RFP out, Madam Chair.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
It is going to ask for a facility that we can lease that'll meet the criterias of being either within the confines of Canton or being able to be annexed by the city of Canton. And that it'll have approximately 87 or so thousand square feet that can be used as a courthouse facility.
Is that parking and everything?
Well, that would be, I'll set the acreage at 30 acres. It'll have to have parking, it'll have to have all the rest, but it'll be a very simple request for somebody to come in and see if there's somebody that may have something that would fit that and bring us a proposal. I don't want to be too specific in what we're looking for, but what we need is approximately 30 acres and about 87,000 square feet. So I imagine we're gonna have a very limited pool, and it may be a pool of one. But if there's somebody else out there, we're giving them the opportunity to come forward.
I don't disagree with this. I was waiting for the land side of it because we need to have a long-term location, and that needed to be part of it. And again, we don't have to adhere to any of this. This is just looking for proposals.
Just putting everybody on notice that we are here, we're interested, and we have a need.
Right. Call the question, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Sean.
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins.
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes. Thank you.
The second issue is that when we were working on the jail, I came before you and asked to be able to hire outside counsel if needed to assist with different issues. This is not going to be a normal lease that we do within the county. It's going to be very specialized, and I'd like the authorization to spend $5,000 in order to have that in case we need to hire outside counsel to review or prepare a lease, or at least begin that process for us.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, Sean, will you call the roll?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins.
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Wendy?
Good morning. I'm just giving you our second quarterly report for the year from 4-H side, so that's in the packet there. But starting off with shooting sports, the report comes from our shooting sports coordinator. She said we had 42 kids from 30 families participate in shooting sports this spring, which is an increase from just 4 from the year before, but 11 from 2019. We had 21 kids qualify for the state shoot. We had 6 members. They started the season with 8 certified volunteer coaches and added another one by the end of the season. Their summer, fall shooting sports season begins with trap. She had said that would likely be in Beersford, but it will be in Canton. And the muzzle loader part will be at the 4-H complex outdoors. She also notes that they are grateful for the county commissioners, maintenance staff, and 4-H staff for all they have done and continue to do to make 4-H shooting sports a priority investment for our youth. We held the Rabbit Fun Show April 10th in Lenox. They've done this for quite a few years, but this is the first year they've had 93 rabbits from 43 exhibitors from 13 counties in South Dakota and 4 states, which usually is just our surrounding counties to Lincoln County. On the grounds side, Building and Grounds Committee met with the engineer April 28th to discuss the plans at the grounds. An updated set of plans were sent to John R. the first week of June. The Johns and I met with Dirt Moving Company June 9th, and we received an estimate but have not gone out for bids yet. Holes were dug for a sign at the fairgrounds by volunteers, and John, the sign that the Lennox Sunstrom FFA cut out and painted, was installed with the help of John, Tom, and 4-H parent Corey Horner. That was done as part of our exchange we had with the Lennox FFA for them to use our facility for their contest in March. And then the area in front of the building east of the front door was landscaped thanks to John and Tom. The flagpole was installed on this last Thursday. The Dakota Farmers 4-H Club has donated a 4-H flag that will be put up for the 4-H barbecue July 29th. If you've driven by the grounds, the fence and the gate have been painted as of last week thanks to 4-Hers and Tom and our intern. Todd Hazel had 2 boys from his club go to the Canton grounds to power wash the far east building, fix some boards, and remove leaves and debris from the hog barn earlier in June. And then for the first time in years, we had 4-Hers participate in the dairy cattle judging contest at the state. We held a practice at the Norling Dairy thanks to Ted Norling and former Lincoln County 4-H program advisor Megan Clute, who helped them practice. We had 6 members compete in Brookings June 12th. We had the second place beginner, first and second place juniors, and the champion junior team. And then we held our second consumer decision-making horticulture skill-a-thon at the 4-H complex earlier in June. We held sheep and goat weigh-in at the Canton grounds at the end of May and weighed in 43 head. We held a youth in action exploration day and had Chuck and Nathan from Minnehaha County down to help us with that. We held our county public presentations contest in Lenox June 24th. We had 14 members participate, which is 1 less than 2019. We held our county horse show in Canton June 29th. And the shirt that I'm wearing today is the shirt that we will have for all the 4-Hers for this year for Achievement Days, and that was designed by one of our beginner 4-H members. As far as the office, I attended the Spring 4-H Program Advisors Conference virtually May 12th. Jessica and I had a civil rights training with SDSU. And our intern, Carissa Sweeter, started May 24th, and she has presented about rabbits, read books, led crafts, and handed out 4-H goodie bags to families at the Lenox, Canton, and T libraries in June as part of their Tales and Tales summer reading program. And so at the Canton Library in particular, they had a petting zoo the one day, and they had, I would say, easily 75 to 100 kids at that event. And then I attended the Sioux Empire Livestock Show Annual Awards Banquet June 17th. And right now, our commercial pesticide applicator testing, we had 20 during this last quarter. So for the year, we've tested 31 people. And we are stopping that until September so we can get through our 4-H events. And of course, you guys have all heard about the Raising the Roof Part 2 fundraiser we had May 1st. We had an estimated 140 visitors, and from the live and silent auctions raised over $18,000 for that. And then just our facility usage for April through June was shooting sports practices wrapped up. Different 4-H clubs had their meetings there. The Lincoln County Sheriff's Office had a training May 11th through the 13th at our facility, and just some other contests. And then upcoming in Lenox at our facility, we have a livestock judging contest July 16th, fashion review, achievement days, and then the Lenox Boosters will have an event August 28th. So that's my report, unless anybody has any
All right.
questions.
I don't have any questions. Anybody else have any questions?
That's good news, Wendy. And I'll tell you what, I see a lot of parents posting their kids being involved in archery and shooting sports. It just seems like there's an explosion of interest in that stuff, so that's good to hear.
Yep, we've had quite a bit of interest from that, and we have, I think this is the first time they've done the trap and muzzleloader during the summer, or it's been a while since they've done it, so.
And then you had the raffle as well?
Yep, the foundation would like to do a raffle in October, sell raffle tickets in October, and then do the drawing in November. It would be for 5 $100 gift certificates or gift cards from different businesses in the county. We'd sell tickets for $10 a piece. We just need to let the county know from state law that we want to do a raffle, so.
Do we need a motion
I'll
on
move
that?
for approval for your
Second.
raffle, Wendy.
Second.
Have a motion by Schmidt and a second by Commissioner Aaron's. Sean, will you call the roll?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins, Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes.
Wendy, how's the fundraising going for the buildings so far? Are they, how are we doing?
We had a foundation meeting last week, Tuesday, and I think our current amount that we have in our account is over 140,000. So we continue to raise money. I know we'll go after a couple more grants. We did not get the one that we applied for earlier. Was that February, I think? We did not get that grant from the state, but there's a couple more that we want to apply for, continue to do some fundraising, so.
Have you made plans as to what level you would be before you'd break ground on the first building?
Well, according to Chad Hazel from our foundation, he has estimated the show ring facility to be about $180,000, and so we'd like to have that in place. I know John R. wanted to get on the agenda, but didn't get on the agenda, so we could get bids going to do for the dirt work and the show ring facility, as well as the horse arena, because that would be the first phase, I guess is what you'd call it, so.
Do you think next construction season, this thing's gonna happen?
I would like to say it better. So,
No, I agree. We all like to wave the magic wand and do it tomorrow, but, you know, realistically.
we did get a good estimate for dirt work, but need to go through the bidding process to get that going. So we need to get that started, and I think if we can get that done, the company that we had talked to about the estimate thought that the dirt work could be done by October. And then I would say as soon as we have the dirt work lined up, we could start lining up the builder for the show ring. Because I think that we should be able to get there.
Thank you.
Good. Good report, Wendy.
I'll go ahead and move on to item 7, which was tabled. Resolution of Lincoln County approving the preliminary plan of I-29 Ag and Industrial Park. The Planning Commission recommended approval 5-0. Is there anybody here that's going to present on that this morning?
Toby's in the hallway. I can see him.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So this next agenda item you tabled at your last meeting. This is the preliminary subdivision plan for the I-29 Ag and Industrial Park. As presented, Planning Commission staff did recommend approval of this preliminary plan because it does meet the criteria that's established within the subdivision ordinance. There are two proposed sub-areas. Sub-area A and B are 1 and 2. Sub-area 1 or A would be developed immediately or after approval, and then that would have to go through a final engineering review, final subdivision plan review. That's by staff and by our consultants. So at that time, it will go further into the drainage analysis of it. So
And we've had that was our public hearing was when we tabled it.
correct.
So I don't know, is there any further discussion or any motions by the commission?
Madam Chair, one of the questions I had, I guess one of the reasons I had for supporting the tabling was to find out if the applicant has done any work with regard to the surrounding neighbors' concerns about the drainage issues. And so I'd be interested in hearing from them if they've had any further discussions and where that went. And then also, I think kind of a lesser issue was flushing out this issue of berms and vegetation and things like that. So I'd be interested in hearing if the applicants have had any movement on one or both of those issues.
Is there anybody that would like to come up and answer those questions?
Good morning. Don Nelson, 6513 South Jeffrey Avenue, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Mr. Aaron's, to your point, what we did is we went out and we talked to some neighbors to the north so that we could, if need be, irrigate out of our retention ponds onto their property. We have 2 verbal commitments, one from Margaret Abbas and another one from the I-29 pit stop. It encompasses a little over 200 acres. And so that would be a way that in the event that those ponds would get full, we would have a place to go ahead and irrigate onto those farms so that there wouldn't be any abnormal discharge. That said, we intend to be good neighbors. We want to be part of the solution. We don't intend to take and dump water on any neighbors abnormally or change the flow whatsoever. We'll follow the rules as you that are presented or that are part of the application process. We're here to do everything that we can to be good neighbors, and that's what we've done.
All right. Anybody else have any questions?
These holding ponds, approximately how large are they again and how many gallons?
So that would be a question for our engineer.
I think,
I don't,
yeah, that's premature right now. I mean, we've got our drainage plan. Wink's gonna work on this. Our engineers are gonna look at that and they're gonna make those decisions. So I don't know that we need to address it on what we're here for today, which is this approval or disapproval of the preliminary plan itself. So I'm gonna ask for a motion one way or the other.
I would move for approval of the preliminary plan, Madam Chair.
Second.
Thank you. Sean, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes. Motion carries. We'll move on to item 8.
Good morning, Commissioners. We have before us a application for a fireworks shoot on the 10th, which is Saturday at 27549 467th. It's about 2 miles from where I live. I went over and I talked to Mr. Cox at his residence. He showed me how he does it. He has water available. He shoots from a platform, not off the ground itself. And I did quiz him quite a bit, and he's done this about 3 or 4 years already. So I guess I see no reason not to approve the application that he's brought before us.
Is there a motion?
I know the place, Harold. I'd move for approval.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Sean, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes. Motion carries.
I'll notify him as the permit has been approved.
Thank you. And then Harold, you've got the next item?
Yeah, that's just the quarterly signature sheet that comes every quarter for signature by the chairperson and the auditor. I've already signed it, and I believe Sean has it available after the meeting is over. Just
Thank-
states that I've completed everything I need to qualify for our LEMPG program, which funds half of my salary and administrative expenses.
Thank you.
I move to authorize the chair to sign.
Second.
Thank you. Sean?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes. And we move on to item 10 of our agenda.
Thank the Lord we got some rain too.
Yes.
So, 2021 Senate Bill 152 authorized counties to issue off-sale liquor licenses. The state has authorized Lincoln County to have a maximum of 10 of these licenses. The SDCL 3542 subsection 3 governs this, this blessing to the county. This resolution here in the share file and the public information packet is the resolution that, if you choose to enact, will allow us to issue these licenses. The fee in this resolution would set a new license at $1,000 and the renewal at $500. And it would also set the maximum number of package off-sale liquor license at the maximum that the state allowed at 10. You can change this if you so desire. The statute does say that the renewal fee can be no more than $500 and that the license fee can be no less than $300. If you would like, I can read the resolution in its entirety, and you may adjust that number and the fee as you wish before we approve.
Does anybody have any thoughts?
Madam Chair, I think this bill was brought before the legislature and passed because counties were complaining about some of the options that they have, or in this case, didn't have. And I think one of the other concerns, and this was just articulated in an Argus Leader story last week, in which we as counties bear the burden of having to prosecute crime-related alcohol, and there's a significant amount of cost involved with that. And we don't want to have to pass that burden on to property taxpayers. And I think in going back and looking at the legislative history on this, they wanted counties to be able to recover some of their cost, even if it's minuscule in relation to what their total law enforcement budgets are. But I think to a certain extent, we do need to look at the fee structure here. I don't know whether $1,000 is enough or not, but that was the reason why the bill was brought before the legislature in the first place, to address some of the concerns that counties had. You know, just because we may raise the fee to 5,000 or something like that today, it doesn't mean we're gonna recover our law enforcement costs by any means. But that was the intent behind 1252, as I understand it. So I do think it's worthy of having a discussion today.
If I may add to
Yeah,
this.
go ahead, Sean.
I apologize, yes.
Go ahead.
Municipalities in the county, their off-sale liquor licenses are around that $500 mark. So the 1,000 is more than average, and it is along the lines of some of the other counties that have enacted the off-sale resolution that is before you.
Was there a max and a minimum that was set?
For a new license, it can be no less than 300, and for renewal, it can be no more than 500. So the renewal amount that is in the resolution is the maximum.
And this is just in the unincorporated part of.
Correct. And the bill stated that it has to be 3 miles outside of a municipality,
Right.
which is in our resolution.
And the municipalities have the ability to charge sales tax and
Right.
counties don't.
Right.
What is does anybody know this? What does one of these sell for on the open market? Just out of curiosity, if
This
anybody
is
even knows.
brand new in South Dakota,
Okay.
so there isn't any counties that have an
Okay.
off-sell package license outside of a municipality.
Okay.
Then this came into effect on July 1st, and that's why we're doing it now.
Are there municipalities that presently have this ability?
Yes.
Do you have any indication of what, if you know?
I haven't checked with them. I mean, I can check. Worthing, I think they just offered an off-packet or off-sell package license. But I don't remember them saying what the amount was.
Municipalities are selling, the fees are around that 500.
500?
But I think, Commissioner Aaron's, are you asking what that secondary market is?
Yeah, what the secondary market
Okay,
is?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, a regular liquor license is 100-fold times what the application fee is?
Mhm. And I mean, there, with the specifics in this, with it has to be 3 miles out of a municipality, you know, that type of limitation on it. The people that have actually passed it probably have had 1 or 2 that I've heard that actually applied for it.
I guess I'm gonna be is there even a need for this? I mean, by the time you do 3 miles out of municipality in our county, that area gets extremely limited. And then the other facet is, I just don't know that we need to have off-sale licenses. And it doesn't read that we're mandated to offer them, it just gives us the option. I'd be on the record, I'm not in favor of an off-sale license at this time, given the restrictions that the state has placed upon it.
Other thoughts?
If someone were gonna do it, Toby, someone wanted to sell off-sale, are there presently any businesses like that?
No.
So this would be an entirely new concept for the county then?
No, but they'd have to be zoned commercial. They'd have to
Okay.
be in a zoning district, and I don't see any areas outside, 3 miles outside a municipality that are zoned commercial.
Okay.
I mean, Toby, the places that I would think of would be an event center that has a liquor license, and they're gonna allow somebody to take, if they're outside of 3 miles, and they could pick up the off-sale as well, and then sell it to their customers as they're leaving. I just don't know that I need to see the need. We don't get the sales tax on it again. Let the municipalities collect the sales tax. And then that can get back into the system to try to offset some of the costs.
Toby, would it be possible, not to belabor this, but would it be possible for somebody to put a convenience store outside, and in that convenience store, they would have off-sale liquor capabilities.
Yes.
What I was thinking, Commissioner Schmidt, is golf courses.
Yeah.
I was thinking bait shops. I don't know why I was thinking that, but
Well,
I'm just thinking commercial district.
If
that's
you
all.
know of a bait shop, Madam Chair, tell me, because my kid is, my youngest is always looking for night crawlers. We gotta go to Walmart to get them all the time.
And we talk about how we don't get money back for outside sales. I know we don't get the sales tax back, but we do have a liquor reversion program right now where sales that are made outside of municipalities, they pool it together and split it back out to the counties. So we do get money from those alcohol sales outside of a municipality.
and Commissioner Aaron's is correct. The county association did lobby to try to have some means of recouping some of the costs for law enforcement and the social ills of this thing. And this is what the state legislature came up with. Are we waiting on?
I'm waiting on a motion.
Are we waiting on that to, Madam Chair? Are we waiting for the fees to be the issue or what? I mean,
Well, if we want to change the fee, we can change the fee. We just need a motion, I would think, to do that.
I don't know.
Yeah, you can approve the resolution with your changes.
I'm fine with it as written.
I'm fine with, I'll move that we adopt what we have, the state has presented to us or what we have in front of us this morning.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Any further discussion? If not, Sean, will you call the roll?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
No.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes,
Commissioner Landine.
Yes. Motion carries. Move on to item 12.
Item 12 is about temporary special alcohol licenses. So our current temporary special license resolution is pretty outdated. This resolution before you would not only add the new ability to have this off sale, but also bring it back up to some of the, basically we're updating the statute references in it and adding the off sale to it. So this would, it's basically identical to the statute. The main difference here is that instead of having all of the off sales listed, so off sale malt, off sale wine, off sale farm wine, I just listed the off sale liquor because that encompasses everything. One of the things that I've noticed dealing with these temporaries is that the largest barrier is that applicants don't understand these licenses. And I think that this will simplify that process. If you want to sell off sale, here's the license for it. And then there's the fee, which hasn't really changed from our previous resolution, which is $25 a day and $50 for any liquor related license.
I'd ask for a motion to approve.
If I may I add one more thing about, just to try to preempt a question about why?
Sure.
Okay. One of the reasons that off sale was ever included in the special event license for temporary was for fundraisers that want to do like silent auctions for bottles of wine or liquor, or have like raffles for those at fundraising events. So that, if we want to preempt the reason for that.
I was just gonna say, they didn't wanna turn it into a portable license.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the statute does limit how the duration and quantity that you can have in a year of these.
Also move, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? If not, Sean, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes. Move on to item 13.
So it seems some time ago we set the number of on-sale liquor licenses at 8. We currently have 6. And then when we changed the price of an on-sale liquor license in 2008, it looks like through some linguistical knot, we rescinded that resolution that set that number. And just to tidy it up, we need to set that number because we are required to set that number. The state says that we can have a maximum of 11 of these licenses. We currently have 6, so it is up to the board on how many y'all want to have as a max.
I would move that we set it at the max.
Second.
Sean, will you call the roll?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes. Motion carries. Move on to item 14. This, we had talked about this at our last meeting.
I have one more item. May I?
Oh, I'm
use
sorry, go
13.
ahead.
Thank you. We now have a 5th legal newspaper, and there are some items that we have to publish for that we normally have been asking for a publication fee. And this resolution before you is to increase that publication fee from $100 to $120, and in some cases, adding this publication fee. For example, the airport hangar lease transfer, we have never had a publication fee for that, even though that requires us to publish notice for public hearing. And this, if you notice in the previous resolutions for alcohol, we just referred to a publication fee. Well, this is that resolution to set that. And so we can now just review this one resolution annually to make sure that we're recovering the appropriate amount of costs so that we don't have to rescind and redo several ordinances all at once.
I would so move, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you. Sean, will you call the roll?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes. Motion carries. Now we'll move on to item 14. We had talked at our last meeting about the roundabouts that were needed in the county. And I know Terry's here. I don't know if you want to come up. Maybe we'll have some more questions for you, maybe not. And the cost of those, and in order to pay for those, we've talked about using SDCL 10, 12, 13, which is a road and bridge improvement levy at a max of 60 cents. And it seemed like there was some consensus that maybe we could get this done this year so that we could do some projects and improve the roads for our taxpayers. Terry, can you just run through what those, the locations were again?
Okay, first of all, I'll do the County Road 117, 110 intersection. We had a study done on that. Excuse me. And they had two options for us. Option one was adding turn lanes onto this intersection. And then I believe, and then that would leave it a four-way stop, okay? Now that would, I believe the cost on that was like that was like 800,000, 600,000 to do that. The roundabout option is a single lane roundabout. It'd be very similar to the one on, up on 106. And that one was like $1.2, $1.3 million for that. The next one we had was County Road 106 and County Road 123. Now that's the big one. Again, they gave us two options on this one. Option one is to add right turn lanes on all four corners. And then we would also have to increase the length of the queue lanes for the left turns, because currently those are too short. That option was about $1.2, $1.3 million. The second option up there is putting in a double lane roundabout. And again, so that was about $1.7, $1.8 million for that cost estimate. Again, all these estimates, these cost estimates, they do include right-of-way contingency to purchase right-of-way, additional right-of-way, and utility contingency to move utilities. I know one thing that was brought up last week was the city of Harrisburg at Cliff and Willow. They are doing an intersection project down there. Just had contact with them, and they were saying that theirs is gonna start May of '22. They're looking at a 6-month window to do theirs. And he was saying that they're gonna have a hard closure on theirs for about 2 months of that time. So, I guess if I'm looking, logistically wise, I don't know if it'd be a good idea to do R106 and Cliff intersection next year, because we would be taking out 2 east-west corridors, in that area in the same year. So I guess I would probably, I think we're probably gonna have to look at possibly doing the one up on Cliff, probably in '23, would be our best option. I did ask the city if they had any issues if we did the one west of town, on 117, and they didn't. And again, I don't think that one would be an issue, because that's, it's a north-south corridor, even though it's on the same road. I think we'd be fine on that one if we wanted to do that one next year, so.
Okay. And I know in our share file, we've got, kind of the amount that we would, based on 2020 taxes payable in 2021, to the county would retain, if we did the 60 cents, $3,440,000, or excuse me, $3,440,227. And then the municipalities would get, their factored in share of that, which is based on population, I believe. Is it population or is it?
Valuation.
It is their valuation,
Yep.
so they get 25 cents of the 60
Right.
cents per municipality. So, for instance, Harrisburg would get $408,000, right? Well, those are their valuations, so, excuse me, Harrisburg would get $61,259.
And that's last year's valuation.
That's last year's, and then the factor, it changes with growth and CPI. So it's likely that those amounts that would go to the municipalities would increase over time. So,
I have a question. Terry? You don't have to get up. Terry?
yes,
you know,
he
we-
does. He needs
we
to come to
talked
the
about,
microphone.
We talked about tall grass, and the city is going to move tall grass. They're gonna go down to, what, 89th or 90th Street, sewer and water, and then we had the last, 3/4 of a mile or something like that, plus. If the city of Sioux Falls is going to receive part of this, I think this would be a request that they just do the whole thing all the way.
I would agree with that, and I wouldn't, personally, I don't know that we need to get really in a big hurry to
No.
do anything with that. Because I believe, when 100 comes through, they'll be redoing that intersection down at 106.
Yeah.
And then they can make it what they want, they can connect down to what they want. I would agree with that statement.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
So based on our discussions last week and today, I'd like to entertain a motion for this option that we have to pay for road and bridge improvements here in the county. And I would ask for a motion at the max of 60 cents. And I think, I think we probably should put a sunset on it. So I would ask for that with a 5-year sunset. If there's any consensus on that.
Question for Terry.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we've had the study of road projects that we need to do 5 years. Does that make a significant dent or just scratch the surface? I get a little leery of putting a 5-year set on this because from what I recollect, it's gonna take us quite a few years to make an impact into our needs assessment that was done. What I hate to have is we get to do a few projects and then this thing goes away. I think it's fair to the taxpayers of all the county to say that we're gonna address as many of these as we possibly can before we do. I do agree it needs to be a sunset, but given the size of the list of projects that have been identified, I would hate to cut the feet from underneath this too early, so.
I think this will take us a little ways into the future, if you're gonna sunset it out at 5 years. Because I believe that there would be other projects, intersections mainly, again, at any of our corridors that run up there. A lot of it's gonna be intersection stuff that we would take care of, unless we wanna start getting into widening corridors. But again, that, if we're gonna do that, then this money's gonna go pretty quick. Because we're looking at widening corridors. I don't know how wide we're looking, if we're just adding a turn lane all the way along there, or if we're gonna go 4 lanes on some of these sections. Again, to me, a typical county highway road is a 2-lane rural section road. We did that project from 106 on the west side of the interstate. Did that like 2006 or 8, I believe, something like that. We widened that out. And we're 8 years later, whatever it was, and we were talking, we need more capacity over there. So I would just hate for us to have to spend the money to do, a temporary fix on some of these when maybe we can just wait for, whoever the municipality is to come down and do what they need to on them.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, but there's a couple roads that I can think of. One of it is a stretch of 111 from 106 up to 57th Street. Gets a huge amount of traffic. I'm not sure when those do. I think that we need to work with both those municipalities and there's no shoulder on that road. Gets a tremendous amount of traffic. It's really not safe. I hate to just let this for the municipality solely to figure out. I think we use this as a catalyst to say, hey, let's pool our funds together and, start addressing some of these areas that may or may not happen when they annex into it. So again, the funds will go quickly if we truly address it. So, and again, Sherry, correct me if I'm wrong, even if we said it, we don't have to take it each year, is that correct?
Well, if the year you stop taking it, then you have to go through this process again.
But if we set it at 60, do we have to take 60 every year?
You can lower it down to whatever. But it's just when you don't have it on there, then we start the process over
All
again.
over again. I don't know that 10 is too much to ask taxpayers to do, given that we don't have to take the 60 cents during that. There's definitely an immediate need that we need to generate some funds. But the needs won't disappear in 5 years, that's for sure. So I would ask that we consider longer sunset.
And I'm fine with that. I mean, the money's gonna be needed for our roads no matter what. With the increasing costs that we're gonna have with courtrooms and figuring out how to pay for all of that, this would certainly help support the highways budget and help us to improve some of our roads according to our plan, which if I remember, even when it was done a couple of years ago, there was $61 million of short-term projects that needed to be done. So I think this is a step in the right direction, whatever that sunset clause might be. If there's a number we can agree on, I say we get it done. But Commissioner Aaron's, what are your thoughts?
Terry, how much of your budget is non-obligated funds? Meaning that we could take them and put them somewhere else in the county commission budget?
Currently?
Yeah.
0.
Okay.
I mean, because, what I have now in my budget is for maintenance.
Right.
Preservation and maintaining the structure we have, infrastructure we have.
And so can't take anything out of your budget, use it elsewhere. And if we raise the taxes on the roads and bridges here, we can only use this money for roads and bridges, right?
Correct.
That is correct.
Can't
So-
go out and pay our courthouse lease payment with it, can we?
No.
Right?
So if, you're right, I mean, if we wanted to cut my budget back to use money over there, you can, but that's just less maintenance that I'm gonna get done, and then we're gonna fall further behind on our,
It's robbing Peter to pay Paul.
correct, yes, sir.
Well, I think it's important. We obviously would like to do more, but this seems to be a realistic, conservative approach that we address two issues, critical issues for the future. Plus, you have other revenue sources that you can utilize to address some immediate situations that are there. We don't have to use all of the money if we don't want to. And we can sunset this in 5 years, demonstrating to the taxpayers that you're doing this in a very conservative approach, but they can see the results. So
Commissioner
I'm
Gibbon?
comfortable with the 6, and I'm comfortable with the 5 years, Madam Chair.
Yeah, I was just more thinking of 3 years, I guess, because probably down the road there'll be other projects as well, so.
Would there be a compromise, Terry, if we generated the $2.1 million? I mean, to spend $4 million on a specific project or two, is that difficult to plan quickly and get going? I'm at this point starting to lean toward a 0.3 and a 10-year sunset. Stretches it out longer. Taxpayers are not hit immediate with a huge burden on their tax bill, but we do start to make some inroads on some of these projects. As if in 1 year that we don't have enough funds, I believe that money can stay in that line item fund and accumulate if we needed to pool 2 years of funding for it.
So as far as the two projects we have prospectively coming up here, we could probably do that. The only thing would be, so if we're getting 2.1, is that what you said at 30?
At 0.3, it'd be 2.1.
2.1. So we're gonna be looking at just over $1 million. Yeah, we could probably do that. Like I said, because I'm just looking at when that's when they're gonna be payable.
Right.
So the 117 intersection, I think we can easily get, well, maybe not easily, but we could have IMEG start working on plans, design and start working on right-of-way utilities. We could start that and we should be able to get that one constructed next year, I would believe. But the one on 106 up there at Cliff, like I said, I think we're gonna have to move that out to 23, but again, if there's other areas we wanna start studying with this money as well, what improvements we need on some other sections, corridors, intersections, this money could be used for that.
Terry, like you said, and I think we talked about this at the last meeting, Cliff and Willow is gonna be a hard closure. I've talked to Andrew many times about this. That's happening for sure next year. I've talked to Tim Graff about this in the past. And I think Commissioner Gibbon, you can correct me if I'm wrong, they're not gonna open up until 2028. Do I have the right year number there?
Approximately,
Yeah,
yes.
approximately 2028, so they're not gonna foresee any new traffic. So if we were to do this, that project over there would be safe to do in one of the out years in 2023 or even 24. If I understand this correctly, if you did it at 0.3, you'd raise 2.1 million net for the county, right, Sherry? That's net for the county. That's aside from the other property taxes that would be redistributed that go to the other municipalities. And so 2.1 million would be more than enough to pay for the first roundabout, right?
I would believe so, yeah.
It'd be like an extra $1 million.
Because I think that one on 117, I believe that was 1.2.
1.2.
I believe 1.3, somewhere right in
And
there.
maybe if you add a little inflation
Yep.
over the course of the next year, and then it would be due and pay, the bulk of it would be due and payable, what, 30, 60, 90 days after you sign off on it, or how does that work?
It depends on how pay apps come in with the contractor. I would say, you know, so taxes are payable April, October, is that correct? So you'd get your first roughly $1 million or so in April, hopefully, and then the second one wouldn't come until in October. So that'd be, you know, trying to get 300,000 out of my budget if that project was done by October, you know, so like I said, it kind of depends on when the project was going to be completed, and when pay apps came in. But probably the bulk of it would probably cover the April's payments, I would believe.
And Sherry, if I understand this correctly, even though the county may not want to use all of the funds collected, they're still coming out of the property taxpayers' checkbook, all at the amount we assess them at, right?
Right,
Or
and then
does that flex?
Nope, well, I guess.
It doesn't, does it? So like today.
If you set 60 cents today, then that's what it'll be per thousand.
Right, that means it's coming out of the property taxpayer's pocketbook.
But then it would go into the highway fund and it cannot be spent on anything but the highway fund.
Right, so in terms of the taxpayer seeing the effect on him or her, whether we use the money or not, it goes out of their wallet regardless.
Question that I have, how did Minnehaha County pass an opt-out and not utilize all of it, but get to determine how much of that they want to spend in any one given year? So if they had an opt-out for X amount of dollars, they don't have to utilize that. They determine that by saying, we wish to use this much of an opt-out. So they didn't have the taxpayers were not paying for the full opt-out all the time. They were just paying for a portion of what the opt-out called for.
Correct, yep.
So if you asked for 60 cents, you could say, well, this year we only need 30 cents of the 60 cents, correct?
Yes, I mean, I don't think it's like an opt-out. I think you come in and you said it, we're going to do, I think you said it during the budget process, we're going to do 30, whatever. It's not saying 60 cents is the number that it's always going to be.
No, it's just a maximum that you
Yep,
set.
for this year.
Yes.
So
Well, you
for
are one in
next
a
year.
given year, but if you had this for, let's say, 5 years, and you didn't need it for the first year, I mean, to me, I'm confused here. I thought that when you asked an opt-out, you asked for a certain amount of money, but if you didn't need all of that, the taxpayers weren't forced to pay for all of that.
No, you would set the amount that you need prior to me finalizing the levies. So you'd say, I need 60 cents, that's what we would set, and that would be, so the next year you say, okay, well, this project actually got pushed out a year, so we're gonna, whatever, flex it out, we only need 20 cents. Then you come in before the levies are set, and you say, we need 20 cents.
Okay.
But setting this gets it started, and then once you say we're not gonna do it, then you have to restart it.
That's right.
Commissioner Poppins?
Terry, I have a question. And it is an opinion question, and I like your opinion on this. So between what Commissioner Schmidt just spoke of a 5-year limit and a maximum, it generates the same amount of total revenue, whether it's a 0.3, which is half the max and spends over 10 years, which is probably more manageable for your department to handle projects, you know, that accumulate up to 2.1 or 5.2 per year. Because is it 5.2 or, no, 4.2, excuse me.
3.4.
3.4, based on last year's taxes.
Or, no, 4.2. If, yep, on a max, which is easier for you to manage or more appropriate for you to manage, do you think? Or no difference at all? I appreciate.
I think it depends on what we have lined up for projects and the type of project. So if we're gonna do corridor widening, I mean, the money's gonna go pretty quick. I mean, we could use up an entire year and a half of this opt-out on one project for 2 or 3 mile road section. You know, so that would go pretty quick. But if it's just gonna be intersections that we're mainly concerned about, I mean, the 30 cents would probably be, you know.
Yeah, I'm just
feasible.
trying to think, because so many times it takes the engineering, and it takes a year just to get the engineering done. So we wouldn't have necessarily all these projects ready to go in 5 years when we're gonna levy this fund, versus if we did it over the 10-year period, it gives us time to plan and implement and pay for. I just curious, so.
Yeah, and I think one thing is if this passes, whether it's 30 cents or 60 cents, I think we can start planning out further, into the future projects, what we wanna see done. You know, that may encompass, doing some additional, you know, studies on road sections or the corridors, intersections. But that's something we can begin on now, and it won't be such a push to get them done, because we will have an idea that these projects are gonna be multiple years out.
What was, when we were looking at these, when you and I were looking at that mass transportation plan, what was that next project out? And it was really expensive. Wasn't it like $6 or $7 million?
Yeah, and I believe that might have been the Cliff Avenue corridor widening. You know, so again, we have to make up our minds and see if we want to, that's what we want to get into, you know,
Right.
for a typical county road section. If we want a multi-lane roads, you know.
Terry, sorry, I cut you off there.
You know, because I mean, I think that's gonna, you know, bring other challenges, for maintenance on our end, snow removal, such things like that,
Sure.
so.
Either way, sorry, I yield.
Better go ahead.
Either way, we're generating $21 million either over 5 years, or over 10 years. It's just, you know, is there too much pressure per se to get this done and?
To spend the money?
With,
Hey, well,
no,
look,
no offense, because I'm now with this daughter and how slow she tells me how things move. Sometimes, you know, if we had all 5 of them engineered and all that, 5 years worth of plans and we just implement them, I don't think it'd be an issue, but I do think it would be an issue, given that, you know, we've got engineering that takes a year, et cetera, and more, and if there's land acquisition, it takes time. I just would caution getting, I know I'm excited that we may be able to finally tackle some of these projects, but I do believe it's gonna take some time to implement and get this all done, which is, in my mind, 5 years is not going to give us enough time to do it properly and not just start to spend money because we have the money.
Corridor widening, Terry. I've had many discussions with Harrisburg. They, at this point in time, they're not interested in having 4-lane Cliff Avenue coming into Harrisburg. And I think you've probably had those same conversations. If we did, and Cliff Avenue coming out of Sioux Falls, obviously, you know, 85th Street is the end of the, I think 85th, that corner of 85th Street to Cliff is where the 4-lane ends. And I think that's where we take over about, isn't it?
Yes.
Somewhat. Well,
I'm sure.
if we did corridor widening, you know, just talk through that for a second, because we would do corridor widening from 85th to Harrisburg city limits, but Harrisburg doesn't want a 4-lane coming into their city, right?
Well,
They believe that turning Cliff Avenue, you know, they don't want a east and a west side of town that's intersected with a huge, like, Minnesota Avenue or 41st Street. That's kind of their concept of community. Can you, just for a second, because we're on this corridor widening, and I think it's important, can you kind of talk through what that would look like? And I know we're way out here, we're speculating, but you did bring it up as potentially project number 3 here. What would that actually look like?
I guess, to me, it's gonna be a 4-lane road. And again, I'm not, you know, as a typical county section, to me it is, and it might be a divided, I don't know. You know, a divided, you know, with ditches. It's not gonna be curb and guttered, because I don't think we need to spend our money on curb and gutter.
Right.
Or concrete roads. But you're right, I've had conversations with the city, and I don't, I don't think that they're much on board with having, 4-lane coming into town. But I think with capacity issues, maybe at some point it's gonna have to happen, maybe.
Well, in terms of a capacity issue, if we were to do corridor widening, isn't it better off to do corridor widening on 106, given Highway 100 coming in, or not?
Actually, I believe the studies are showing that 106 is gonna have less, with 100
Because of
going in,
100.
yeah.
Okay.
And again, in our master plan, a lot of those, traffic, impacts, with were set up with 100 and then without 100. And with 100, the levels on our roads actually decreased, I believe, if I.
Reduces the pressure?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
You know, so,
Terry-
so and again, like on 106, if you're, you know, I think a lot of the stuff on 106, I think it's gonna be intersection up, you know, having turn lanes at intersections.
Okay.
You know, because that's where most of your slowdowns are happening on that, you know, so.
This, Terry and Commissioner Aaron's, one of the things that I've been asked many times is why the county doesn't, if we're looking at this, why we don't look at Southeastern Drive, which is directly 1 mile east. And Terry, we won't ask you about that, but that's one of the questions, because everybody says, well, you know, if Cliff is so melted up and it's so congested and they got this, and Sioux Falls is growing on the east side tremendously, you know. So have we ever thought about that? Or have we, is that a nightmare?
Well, you see now, therein lies a problem. I think once we start taking and rebuilding or taking over township roads, I think we're really opening up a can of worms. And if that's something that we feel that we need to do, you know, so that would be a decision that you guys would have to make, to see if we start taking over townships, because there's a lot of them. You know, I think several years ago, I think I had kind of penciled out on paper, you know, some of the road sections, and I think I came up with about 11 miles.
You did.
You know, up in that area. You know, and it's southeastern, you're looking at 272nd, which is gravel. You're looking at Tallgrass, Sundowner, just different road sections up in that area. And 85th Street, of course, 85th will probably be built out with the interchange, I don't know.
Well, there's a lot of pressure inside the city of Sioux Falls for east-west thoroughfares. But it seems like here at the county, most of the pressure is for north-south. Because we gotta move traffic in and out of Sioux Falls every day on our county roads, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, does it make sense? Probably does make sense to do southeastern, to have another north-south corridor. You know, but again, at what cost, you know?
At some point in time.
Yeah. No.
Madam Chair, so if we're looking at this, if we have two different proposals, we have 6 cents or 60 cents for 5 years, if that was what we talked about originally. Commissioner Poppins, you proposed 30 cents over 10 years, reflecting both would accomplish the same amount of revenue generated, but it would be spread over a longer period of time.
Sherry, do you want to say something?
Yep, so just to clarify, if you set the 90 cents, then you'll get growth in CPI on that. But if you go into the second year and you set it to 30 cents, then you're only gonna get growth in CPI in the 30 cents, so you can't go back up. So, just food for thought, that once you set it, then you get growth in CPI on that. It's not, it doesn't fluctuate. You set it, then growth in CPI.
And this would start with collection of property taxes for 22, right?
Yes, 21 payable, 22.
In my mind, we've identified and we've really only talked about 2 projects seriously that this tax increase would cover. And the first project is for 1.2 million, right? And the second project is how much again? 1.8?
1.8.
1.8. Now, if we set it at 0.3, that means we're collecting 2.1 million, which is more than what we need for 2 identified projects. So I think if anything, and it's very tough for me to vote for a tax increase, but you gotta balance that with the need for infrastructure. And if I were going to do that, the max I would support is just a little over what we need, as opposed to $1 million above and beyond what we need. And granted, I think there's some inflation in there as well. We're gonna have some increased cost of construction. But it's gotta be targeted, limited, and the scope has to be defined. So if anything, I mean, I think 0.3 or the 30 cents is too much. You know, I think I would, if I were gonna do this, it would be just enough to pay for the projects over the course of 3 years, 22, 23, and then 24. And then that would pay for what we need and give us just a little bit more than what we need. And then also, that makes it a little easier for the taxpayer to stomach, because frankly, right now, nobody has called me asking to do these road projects. Everybody has called me asking me not to raise their taxes. And in Harrisburg with Cliff and Willow, there was a groundswell of support from the grassroots for that project. What I'm concerned is, you know, road projects never have a natural constituency, right? People don't just wake up in the morning and say, I'm gonna form a group and let's get that intersection fixed. Usually it's up to government or contractors or whatever to initiate that. And here, there's been no groundswell of support to do these two projects, but I did talk to Superintendent Graff a while ago about this stuff, and, you know, they're not gonna open up till 2028. We're not gonna have failing levels of service, at least according to the state DOT, until 2042. But if we were gonna do these, I could do them collecting just enough taxpayer money over 3 years. I definitely don't want to see people get hit on a $300,000 home valuation with $180 every year for the next 3 years. That's just too much, given everything that's been going on in society. But I could see that over the course of 3 years at like a 0.2, and then that reduces it down to like $60 a year for 3 years on a $300,000 house. And then people know where their taxpayer money is going. It's going to these projects. They know what they're paying for. They know that the money can't go to other projects and do other things, so it's all locked in. And I think people would feel good knowing, even though they have to pay a tax increase, they're not gonna feel good about that. But they at least would feel good knowing, hey, that's where that increase went. It went to that road project. So that's kind of where I'm at. I think that's the happy medium.
And I thought I had the happy medium, trying to not impact. So we all think we have the happy medium, but I don't disagree with what you're saying. I do think we don't want to impact the taxpayers any more than we have to. But I will say that in passing, when people talk to me, they discuss how difficult the roads are, and we have some very good roads, but with the growth, they're going to get impacted quickly. And we need to start getting, I won't say that we'll get ahead of the curve, but we need to get caught up to the curve. There's definitely several projects that are clearly identified. I think there are projects on that list that we just haven't had time to work through because we know what the first couple projects are. Last thing I'm gonna support is we do a couple projects and then we don't have funding to do the rest, because all taxpayers should have a benefit for whatever area that they live in that can be improved with the road traffic and or bridges that we've not repaired because we didn't have the funds to do so. So that is why I think at a minimum, this needs to be 10 years. I do support not impacting the taxpayers to the full levy every year, given that it would be a daunting task, I think, to spend $4.2 million over a 5-year period to get everything done. I think it's a wiser decision to spread it out over years. And again, we still don't have to take it if we find that we have got it done. So, but limiting it to 10, I just cannot support that. Or to 3, I cannot support that.
You know, Commissioner, it's popular to not want to talk about hitting the taxpayers. That's a very, very comfortable spot to be politically. However, the taxpayers that I've talked to are pretty smart, and they say, when you do this, do it right. Just don't shortchange yourself. Do something, get it done right. Make sure you do it. You build it big enough, you build it strong enough, you lay enough money out there so you can get something done. I don't argue with you at your 20 cents, but I'm looking at saying, well, 20 cents or 30 cents if I have a $300,000 house, or whether I'm paying $60 or I'm paying $90 a year, seems, if you want to play the game, you can talk about buying a Coca-Cola or a Pepsi-Cola, if whatever your flavor is, and putting that money aside every year. We're not talking about major sums here, but we are talking about the ability to not only do projects, but to give our highway department the chance to do some study, to find out what it is the most critical things. What are the priorities that we need to look at? And by extending this out for Commissioner Poppins, if you want to go 10 years, fine. At least we know what we can prioritize and get done. Because there's going to be more than just 2 roundabouts. Because this population is not going to all of a sudden quit. When you got 1,000 young people that are 1,000 kids that are going to be in this kindergarten class at Harrisburg, you know that there's going to be a lot of growth out there. And there's going to be a lot of growth in Lennox, and there's going to be a lot of growth everywhere, and those roads are going to get hit more and more and more, and they're going to grow exponentially. And I would rather say I'm in favor of having enough revenue to not only those 2 projects, but doing the strategic study necessary to where we're going to spend and how we're going to take care of that north-south traffic. So I like the 30 cents. If we go over 30 years or 10 years, that's fine.
Commissioner Gibbon, what are your thoughts?
Well, I originally said 3 years, and I still feel that anything beyond that too is just a little bit of a stretch looking at future projects. And I know you can do it right, but it's still taxpayer burden no matter what you do. And I do know we have to keep up with growth. So I guess I still maintain that the 3 to 5 year time period would be more advantageous than 10 years.
Terry, on that master transportation plan, and I don't know, Commissioner Gibbon, if you've had a chance to look at that, there was $61 million of maintenance projects that were solely related to safety and road condition. They weren't geared towards, whimsical projects by any means. Is that a fair statement?
I would have to look back, but I would say the 60 million the number you're talking about.
Yeah, that was the
I think
short-term
I think
5 years.
that's just short-term projects, and I think there was 12 to 15 of them, 12, I think.
There
maybe.
were.
So, and again, that's not taking into account midterm and long-term projects. So,
Yeah, there's definitely a need for these funds over a longer period of time, especially if we go with the 30 cents. Even the 60 cents, I mean, you're still way, way, way behind the 8 ball on improving the safety of our roads, which is one of our primary jobs as commissioners is public safety. And up to this point, I don't know that we've been doing the public what they're owed as far as that public safety goes in our roads. So I can go with the 10-year, I can go with the 30 cents, if we do a 10-year sunset, so that we can get some of these things done. So if, I don't know if anybody wants to make a motion on anything, I'd entertain a motion, to move this along and hopefully get something done for our taxpayers.
Madam Chair, if I may reach out to the commissioners, we need to do something. I think we all finally are agreeing on that. Commissioner Gibbon, what I urge you to consider that if we do too short, it doesn't allow us to get into what would probably at this point not be, based on population, the most urgent areas. I think of a bridge, and I don't know if this will be one of them in your area, that if we don't have the time to get this, we don't get to that bridge. We don't get to some of the bridges down outside of the extreme population areas. So that's where I would urge you to consider that. That's what allows us to reach into those areas. And Joel, Commissioner Aaron's will reach out to you. If we don't get the passes, we don't get anything done. So I do believe that the not burdening the taxpayers with the full amount, but yet stretching it over 10 years, it still doesn't reach the 60 million, but it finally makes an impact into I definitely identified needs that we need to do. So with that, I am going to present a motion to do the 0.3 with a 10-year sunset.
Is there a second? There's not a second. That motion would fail.
Commissioner Aaron's, I didn't vote for that because I was playing with trying to figure out, let's do some negotiation here. If you don't like 30 cents, would you take 2.5 cents for 10 years?
No.
So if we sit here in transient and we say we're only gonna go there, and we're not going to compromise, we're not gonna get anything done. We were here, 3 years ago, in the same situation. It was a 3-2 vote. We got nothing done. Roads continue to deteriorate. Population continues to increase. And we sit here and just kinda whittle our thumbs because I'm locked in on one thing and I will not change.
You are not speaking the language required to move me off the dime.
What kind of language would you want to hear?
You are actually inching towards the kind of rhetoric that just made folks like me dig in.
Okay.
You did it last year.
What do you want to hear,
You did it the year
Commissioner?
before. You just think that you're gonna harp at me and you're gonna be able to get me to stop defending taxpayers by saying, well, this is all political and you're just playing politics and all that. Why don't you just come towards my position? I've already come off the dime and said I'll raise taxes. So I have compromised, and I said this is what I'll do. You keep moving the goalposts 10 years, 20 years. You said you'd be okay with a number of years. We've had this same discussion. I've told you where I'm at. That's where I'm at.
Well, if I tell you where I'm at, and that's where I'm at, and we don't agree, then what?
Then you can choose to vote for my proposal or you can vote against it. It's up to you.
And touche.
Madam Chair, my district is rather large, and I tell you, it's agricultural, and you know, every night on the news, you see the effects of the drought. We aren't through this thing because we had 3/10 or 6/10 of rain last night or whatever. This is the beginning of July, and there's a lot of people concerned out there about where we're headed here the next 2 months. Yeah, maybe things will turn out much better than we think, but right now it's a rather dire situation out there. And yeah, I spoke with people about taxes over the 4th of July, 5th of July, and et cetera. There's concern about the economy with the drought situation. So, you know, I'm willing to give, but I'm not going to give away everything.
No, and I understand that, and, you know, and I don't disagree with you, but I know a couple years ago, I mean, the roads in your area, you know, there are roads in your area that need attention. There are bridges in your area that need attention. Terry, how many bridge closures do we have right now?
I believe currently there's just 2.
And where are those at?
One of them is northeast of Canton here, and then the other one is the Junkie Bridge that we had spoken about on 200.
Is that the double? Is that the
Yes.
double bridges?
Yes.
Okay. So it's really hard when people come in, and especially the folks that live near that bridge, how they are locked in certain times of year because that bridge is out. That they're worried emergency personnel could not get to them, whether they can get in and out if the way the road drifts in during the winter. really hard telling those people, nope, sorry, we can't do anything for you because we don't have the funds. This road and bridge levy would allow us to entertain those with some hope of actually doing something and being able, they're taxpayers and their bridge is out. Those are the types of things that this money could allow us to help people with. We don't have it in our other budget to do it. It's just not there. And so these two particular projects are in Commissioner Aaron's district. You're gonna have projects in your district that you want done. I'm gonna have projects. We're all gonna have projects. So I don't like getting, you know, if we pigeonhole and we're only talking about these two projects, you know, where are we gonna be then? We don't have any money for them. We're gonna be sitting right back where we are, trying to figure out how to pay for other projects. And so I'm just asking to look at the big picture here. This needs to go further than just 2 years or 3 years. But I'm fine with the 30 cents. And Joel, you're stuck on point 2?
Yeah, I've moved off of not increasing taxes. I have shifted my position. And I don't look at this through the position of where these projects are. I mean, if we have bridge closures but our highway superintendent didn't tell us we should spend the money there. So when would we fix those bridges? Would that be project number 3? I mean, see, I have a hard time voting for a tax increase to be directed towards hopes and thoughts. I think taxpayers want to know hard, specific capital improvement project plans. They want to say, okay, in 22 you're doing this, in 23 you're doing this, in 24, you know, just like the state DOT goes out 5-7 years or whatever it is, and they identify specific projects. What I'm concerned about, and the reason why I'm not going to go further than 3 years right now, is because it's being said that we have to fix bridges, but nobody is actually committing to saying when they will be fixed.
I mean, Terry does a plan. He does a 5-year plan, and I think he does a 10 and a 20-year plan or some variation of that. So I think the projects are identified on what this money would be used for. It's just engineering, the timing of it. I mean, when Terry and I sat down and went through the short-term projects, sitting there, we did not know how the Highway 100 or the 85th or any of that was going to affect some of those. So we picked projects off of that route, since we don't really know in the end what we're gonna need after all that's done. So that's how we got to these two projects, but there's gonna be more projects. And are you inclined to go 30 cents over 3 years?
If I know what the projects are, because right now the public is only being told what the 2 projects are. If we're gonna collect more taxpayer money than what the actual project cost, that means then one of 2 things. Either A, we don't need it, or B, we need it and we just haven't done the homework to identify to the taxpayer what the project is. So let's either right now or this week, we have until next week, Tuesday, I think, but let's identify through a capital improvement program what specific projects are going to be covered by all of this money. Because right now, under the plan I outlined of doing 20 cents for 3 years, that would give us just a little more money than what we need to do 2 specifically articulated projects. The question is, though, if you do 30 cents, you're going to raise 4.2 million, and we don't need that much. So what would be the next project then?
Well, let me step in. When we looked at these, like I said, we picked your 2. So this money, if we had the extra money, it would allow us to pay for like the traffic studies that we did to pick these two projects. And so we had to do all of that first. So I don't know that you can say right now what that next project is because it's not engineered. We don't know the cost and we don't know the timing of it. And maybe Terry disagrees, but and I don't think you can tie this money to specifics. I think the taxpayers have to trust that we would be good stewards of this money and use it on projects as they are engineered and as they're prioritized. And they have been prioritized. Both.
Projects engineered?
No, I'll tell you that none of them are engineered, and I believe when the DOT lines up 5 years out, 6 years out on their projects, they're not engineered as well.
Right.
All the planning and engineering, it happens when those projects, prior to the years of them actually happening.
It's when they get authorization from the
Correct,
legislature.
correct. You know, and to go back to your question on the bridges, Commissioner Aaron's, I do have a 5-year plan that I do every year, and bridges that we are going to be doing in the next 5 years are on that plan. We have a public meeting and the public has input on them, you know. So those are pegged out for the next 5 years, and most of that funding that is in my 5-year plan is with, those projects will be funded. That's why I have them in there. Any projects that are not funded, that I'm not gonna have funding for, are not in there, if that makes sense.
So the Junkie Bridge and the other bridge, are they both in your 5-year plan, present 5-year plan?
I would have to look back. I had them in there. So, update on the Junkie one. Last year, we received a federal bridge grant for that one. So that one is in the process. Sometime between now and '24, that one will be replaced.
And that's paid for by the federal grant?
Yes, we have a 20% or 18.95% cost share on that.
Okay.
And then the other bridge that's closed northeast town, we received a grant for that as well for removal. Again, that is across the Sioux River.
That one's gonna be removed and not replaced?
Correct.
And then we were looking for what, somebody to haul it away or something to that
Correct.
extent? Okay.
But again, that was part of a grant process. We got it on a removal grant.
Do you think, Terry, there's a need for $20 million of funding for roads currently, improvements?
I think we could do a lot of good with that. Again, it's not all up north. You know, right now I'm working on potential next year's project, paving project, and this might be, you know, a rebuild of the road. I don't know. You know, so if I don't have that money budgeted, I'm not gonna be able to do that. I might have to do it in sections or something, I'm not sure, depending on what the cost is. You know, so there are a lot of issues up north, and again, all those projects are on a CIP. Again, they're not pegged out as this one's first, this one's first, this one's next, this is next. We do not have them categorized that way. We do have them in short-term, mid-term, long-term projects. And again, if I'm not mistaken, I believe that is something I'd shared with you guys in an email maybe a couple years ago. Commissioner Gibbons, you probably maybe not have this, but I can get that to you. So, and again, I broke it down from what the master transportation plan list was. I broke it into separate projects. And then I didn't put a potential year on there because we don't have funding. And I think the one way you find out how you're gonna get the funding or how much funding you need for those is you need to have a study done to get some at least very preliminary findings of what you're gonna put there, or what the change is, or how you're gonna update or upgrade this corridor and intersection.
And these funds would let us do those traffic, I mean, we could have those traffic studies running all potentially at the same time.
Yes. And again, this year I ended up doing the two that we did out of my current budget. I think so far we're at about 14,000 for each one is what it costs.
Sure.
So if you you could use extra money from the opt-out to do multiple other traffic studies then to identify, because we already know, the DOT already told us what to look at in the short term, 12 to 15. You're saying the next step is need to do a traffic study on them before we can
But,
move further.
so the master transportation plan, that just labeled out the needs. Okay, they assessed what those corridors or intersections are at as of current. It would, most of those numbers probably would have been from 18. So that just gives you a general 5,000-foot view of, you need to look at this, you need to look at this project, you need to look at this intersection, this corridor. So for us to determine what that upgrade is gonna be, whether it's an intersection or a corridor, we need to do a study to find out how much traffic are we expecting here in the next 20 years to build it out. Because again, I think that we've done this several places where we've done get-you-by projects, you know, and it goes 8 years, 9 years down the road, and this is no longer sufficient. To me, I think you might as well just spend the money to do the project right and build it what you need for 20 years out, rather than coming back 8 years later and say, we need to fix this.
So if we did 30 cents for 3 years, that's 2.4, that's 6.3 million.
But that's not the county share, is it?
Yes.
Sharing?
That's the county share.
That's not, that doesn't include what goes to the cities?
On the spreadsheet that I gave you, it's got .3. And I think is it 2.4 on that spreadsheet?
So it's 2.1 million net to the county at 30 cents.
Yep.
So if you did 30 cents over 3 years, that's 6.3 million. We've got 2 projects identified in one in 22, one in 23. Those are gonna cost 3 million. So we got $3.3 million overage over that. And
So, when I'm looking at this, the gross would be the 2106. And then when it gets divvied out to the cities, the county would retain 1.7 million. Am I looking at this wrong?
Let me see what I've got, where.
The 2.1 is the total amount collected before the payouts to the cities.
Yep, so that, on this one, the 2.106 is the whole amount. And then after we divvy it out, we get the 1.7 on the
Okay.
0.3.
so if we do 30 cents, the net to the county is 1.7.
Yep.
Right.
Okay, all right. Well, let's start using exact figures here. That makes better sense.
I should have had the spreadsheet printed out.
It's in our share file.
So 30 cents over 3 years equals 5.1 million net to the county.
Did you say 5 years?
Over 3 years. So if you did 30-cent opt-out over 3 years, so 1.7 times 3, that's 5.1 million. And the 2 identified projects are gonna cost us 3 million. So that leaves us with 2 million extra dollars there.
Well, look at, why does, mine looks like this.
And if we've got to do a bunch of traffic studies before we can even identify any more projects, what I would do is just not, I wouldn't start collecting that out of taxpayers' pockets until we've done those studies. That's why I just am coming at this from a more conservative approach.
Commissioner Aaron's, if you did this for the 3-year period, and the numbers that you were quoting here of collecting was 5 million, and we would have 3 million for the two major projects. 2 million could go to the studying, prioritizing of what we would want. Would we then go back to the taxpayers again, but we would have specific projects that they could understand what the revenue would be spent for?
Yes.
Am I tracking you on that one?
Yes, and you
Okay.
don't need $2 million to do the study. You only need, what is it, 14,000 per traffic study?
But there may be some other issues that could be used with that $2 million as well.
If you start looking at corridor studies, those might be a little more than that.
Okay.
Commissioner.
Okay. So we may need 100,000 to do studying. But we wouldn't, so we could lop off 1.9 million, take our extra 100,000. We could do our two identified projects. We could do our studying. This would obviously, we could do the studies as fast as we can. We wouldn't wait till, year 3.5, or excuse me, year 2.5. And then we can come back here and have this discussion and go over what we've identified as the projects. And then I think taxpayers would feel comfortable knowing that we've done all this homework, because we've already flushed out a number of misnomers at today's meeting. So we could flush all those things out in the public with a public debate. People can see us getting their work done.
So where are we at? Are we at 3 years, 30 cents?
Madam Chair, I think what I'm hearing is we're gonna generate just enough money to do the studies and revisit this in 1 year.
Sounds like it.
Is that a fair assumption, interpretation, Commissioner Aaron's?
Well, you would do the projects too. You would generate,
Yeah, I guess I
Yeah.
can't support that, because we're only generating this for projects that, on a short list that we are on the top. There's many lists that we haven't spoken of because there was so far out, we just didn't do the planning for it. This jeopardizes the ability to do other projects that are in desperate need as well, so.
I think it sets into motion a process that the public can support and get behind. It's the first step. Whenever you take.
Then
the
let's
first
just
step.
do the
Yeah.
study and identify all the projects and then vote to do all the projects. Which I can support that. That's fair for everyone. And responsible to the taxpayers.
Is that what we want to do? Not do this year and wait till next year and do all these studies?
No,
That-
that's not what I want to do, but I guess I'm gonna yield to Commissioner Gibbon.
I'd like to hear from our highway superintendent.
So if we're gonna not do this, and you wanna do all these studies, none of that's in my budget for next year. I don't have the funding for that. Cause as is, I tightened the belt on project costs for next year, which is already submitted to you for budget. So there may not be money to do any study for this coming year. Just wanna throw that out there.
Can I get support for 3 years at 30 cents?
I could support you on that, Madam Chair.
I can too.
Thank you.
What's the 30-cent net?
The net was a little over
That's the
1.7,
1.7.
so it's right around 5 million. Over a 3 year, not considering growth and CPI.
And what was the hitch or the rule with the CPI?
So with if you set it at the 30 cents, then you can only increase by growth in CPI. If you take it down to 20 cents per se, then you can only go from the 20% plus growth in CPI.
So today, if we vote for 3 years at 30 cents, in the next year, we can increase by growth in CPI.
Correct.
What was growth in CPI this year? Just a swag, I mean.
CPI was
swag.
1.7, growth I think was 4.19.
So on this then, at 30 cents, we're looking at what, a couple extra 100,000?
About 12 cents.
12 cents for every 100,000?
It'd be a total of 5.89.
What's that equal into real dollars?
So if they increase, so the next year, if growth and CPI were the same, then the new levy rate would be 0.317. So it's not 12 cents, it's 0.317.
Which equals into how many more
So if I
dollars
take the-
beyond 1.7 million available to us?
Well, based on this year's valuation, or last year's,
This year's CPI was like 400,000.
2.2 would be our number at the top then, and you can factor it down. I might have,
So a couple 100,000?
yeah. 100,000,
100,000?
yep.
Okay.
That'd be
So-
the top number. And then
Top number, so
Yep.
we're looking at over 3 years, we could go 1.7. I know this is just a swag right now.
Well, I would hope so. because-
171819
Yeah, safely probably.
for planning purposes.
Mhm.
That gives us 5.1. That puts us at about 5.3 at the end of 3 years. Okay,
And that could be, you considered your inflation factor.
right. Gonna be inflation and cost. And then at 30 cents, what does that take away from the taxpayer on a $300,000 home? 90?
Yep.
I can support that.
You can support 3-year
I could support 3 years at, in the interest of making a compromise, I can support 3 years at 30 cents. I would definitely want to see a plan for how that extra $2 million, $2+ million is going to be spent. I would think some of it goes towards the studies to do projects in the out years. I would think some of that goes towards our cost share on those, the bridge grant. But I would, I could foresee, you could throw another project in there as well. And then I think what we've got to push for is doing a capital improvement program for the out years. So I can support it. It moves us forward, it balances taxpayer protection along with growing the infrastructure that we need to make the roads work.
Commissioner Aaron's, would you be on the record as these projects are identified, supporting, continuing this extra funding for those projects?
Well,
as
see,
they-
see, that's the whole thing. How can you say you're for something when you don't even know what it is?
Well, you have the luxury of having two projects that have been identified and asking us to support for that, but yet, because projects are a little bit farther down on the list, haven't had the clear forethought yet to get, we don't even know for sure what we're doing on these locations. So it's pretty tough for the other districts to, I think, not have support for their projects that will be identified. There's $61 million that will be specified or could be specified.
I didn't identify these projects, Commissioner.
No,
Commissioner Landine did. with
Yes.
No, I
Siri.
did not say that you
Yeah.
identified them.
Yeah.
I did not say you identified. I said they had been identified.
the highway superintendent, myself, and I believe Commissioner Poppins was part of that. We identified these projects. We're not looking at who's who and whose district. This is what's good for the county.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying, Madam Chair, if I may, that we need to be on the record that we support to do this everywhere.
I don't disagree. And any other projects that we look at, whoever's district they're in, I'm gonna.
Exactly, the whole.
If it's something that's necessary, and like these two roundabouts we feel are necessary, I'm sure that Commissioner Aaron's is gonna look at those with the same amount of seriousness as he's looking at these, and that he will be on board with those projects if that's what our highway superintendent is telling us that we need to do. Is that a fair statement, Commissioner Aaron's?
I think it is.
So,
Thank you, that's what I needed on the record.
So I think, I think we do this and get it done, and I don't know that there should be any disagreement among the five of us. This is good for the county, it's good for the people that travel the roads in our county. To me, this is not a political issue. It's let's get it done because it's our job and that's what we're supposed to do.
Get it done.
So I'm gonna ask for a motion for 0.3, the 30 cents over a 3-year period, keeping in mind that we have identified 2 projects. Do I have a motion?
Also move, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Gibbon. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Sean, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
All right. We'll move on to item 15, which, bunch of parcels of property that we need to declare surplus and authorize an appraisal. And, we're looking at paying for these courtrooms, we're looking at our increasing housing costs for prisoners. I don't know that we need to hang on to any of this extra property. I don't know what the thoughts of the board are on that, but,
Oh, we need Terry back for this.
is Terry still standing out there?
There's 5 on the list. Actually, Madam Chair, I think maybe we would learn some insight if we dealt with the DOT item first, or not DOT, the highway transfer station, that Commissioner Schmidt.
Sure. Yeah, we can take up item 16. I mean, who's gonna lead that off? Commissioner Schmidt?
Commissioner Gibbons and I had this discussion as to disposing of the transfer property, given that there were three alternatives. One was to auction it off. Two was to accept sealed bids. And three was to list it with a realtor. It currently is tied up until October 1 of this year. So in order to get the process started, we have had some interest in that. People have inquiry. So it'd be up to the commission as to which one of those three options would be the would be chosen by this commission. Realtor, auction, or sealed bids.
I'm thinking auction.
I would agree. Commissioner Gibbons also felt the same way. It is what we would know the true value through an auction, and it would be listed. The question would be, do you have to put an RFP out for auctioneers, or since we've had, Joel has been, gave us the preliminary value of this thing, we would list it with our Dykstra, and wasn't it Joel did that? Sean?
We did submit, or we requested proposals for realtors and auctioneers.
Yeah.
We received two proposals from realtors and one from an auctioneer from Westra. Those were due last week. So those are in your
Commissioner
board
Gibbons, I
docs.
just mentioned the three options that we talked about, in your opinion.
Well, I guess I was thinking that a public auction would be the most advantageous. That's my own personal view.
Do we need a motion, Madam Chair, to move this thing along?
Well, what are the proposals? Did you review them, Commissioner Schmidt? I mean,
Well,
what's
I
the
mean,
best
what we
one
would
in your
do, we would
estimation?
list this, we would list the transfer property for sale, complete with the size and the dimensions and all the property that goes with it. And we could put this with a realtor firm, or we could put this for sealed bids, or we list it with the auctioneer to be auctioned off at set certain date following its, after October 1st.
On the request for RFPs to do this, what were the percentages? Like, what were they charging?
Do you know that, Jim?
I do not know that. I'm sorry.
Sean?
I know,
Yeah,
I'm looking for.
through the packet too, and I don't.
It'll be in
3
your
to 5?
Three for the realtors, five for the auctioneer.
Okay.
Is the auctioneer plus cost, or is he assuming the advertisement, et cetera, cost?
I would have to read it. I just looked at the commission note, or the commission amount.
Well, I don't know, Commissioner Aaron's, but usually the seller bears the cost, or in some cases, the seller and the auctioneer split the cost.
Yeah,
But I don't know which one is which on this one.
Yeah, I mean, normally, the auctioneer does a couple grand worth of advertising.
Yeah.
And mobilization and passes that along, yeah. I'm just wondering, how do we squeeze the most money out of this thing with traditional realtor, commercial realtor, or with a good old auction?
And I'm gonna be very clear, defined in my thought that the realtor would be the best in this market to maximize, because he may recommend, as I looked at that site, to split it into two parcels. There's two separate structures. I don't know if that came up in any of the proposals, but in my mind, my belief and my experience, the way to maximize is to list it with a realtor, do a full analysis on this thing, and look at options of splitting that. And that may be the case on some of these other parcels that we have as well. So.
Well, and I was thinking auction, but now if their commission fees and stuff are 3% versus 5%, that probably makes more sense.
Commissioner Poppins, I think you may have a very valid point with that particular parcel of property would lend itself to be split into two parts. So,
Yeah.
I don't have any problem with
I don't
it.
either.
Go with a Realtor.
Okay,
Who were the,
we got proposals from realtors, and who were the realtor
Yeah.
proposals from?
I attached them to your board docs.
Yes.
Got NAI, Don Dunham, Third LLC.
Who was the first one, Sean?
NAI.
NAI?
Mhm.
I would support NAI. I don't know if any of you other have any preferences.
So if you guys have your board docs up, I believe that gets opened for you by IT before the meeting. If you click on the 16th agenda item under regular business, it should have the 3 proposals under there. I didn't look at them, and I didn't know if there were contract negotiations involved with this, so that they are viewable there by you.
Yeah, that's what I'm having a problem with, Sean, is pulling that up.
I personally don't have access to this page because I am not a commissioner.
No, when I used to do this remotely, it worked, but here.
You know, Commissioner Poppins.
Oh, yeah, yours isn't even open.
Is it
Go right down the middle.
involved, because I don't, is it in this file folder here?
It would not be.
Oh, okay.
Can you open board docs on their computer, please?
No, it's his full,
Which one is that?
this one.
Down on the 3. Is that Jim?
So when you sign in, Joel, do you sign in under your normal one that you would be
Yes, I
outside?
sign in under my name with my county email address.
Okay.
See, I'm under my regular
Which obviously
business.
I'm learning
Normally
is
it's
not the
here.
right way.
Yeah, it's always open for you. I assumed that.
And that's that one, and then is the other one on here too?
Yep,
To move it along, you want me to just go print them?
I can do that.
He's got it here.
Yep.
He's pulling it up.
Oh, never mind. You might have it.
You gotta go to the website, Mike.
You gotta go through the website?
Right? That's what he's doing here for me. Right there. So it's no longer in the show. Is that what they're saying?
The Dunham proposal at least gives us some idea of what they would do the listing for. I don't know that the NAI one does. If it does, I'm not seeing it.
Not there. I don't think the board, I thought it was because you were doing it, but I don't think the board packets are published online, are they?
Did you see the second one? Did you see the second? I can't find the second one.
Can't find it.
NAI?
They got Westerns.
Hmm?
I think I just keep getting Westerns all the time.
Does everybody have them?
It didn't even take my password and it just logged me in. Yeah. It says it's working.
So then where is it on here then, Joel? Did you find it?
Okay, go to, agendas and minutes down there, bottom right. There's a thing that.
No.
Did NAI just?
Oh, here it
They
is.
need to be in board docs.
Should log you in.
I'm printing them for them right now.
Meeting support, meeting. Support meeting.
You signed in.
I did sign in.
Over there, it's agenda and minutes.
Yeah, I did that.
Yeah.
Go to number 16.
You're going through that, wait a minute, 16. I did it differently. I do it the old way. Thank you, April.
Thank you.
And Tiffany.
Got it. Got it now.
I haven't found anything yet. I found Dunham's, but I can't find the other one.
They have
The,
comparables, but they don't.
I can see them.
the Dunham proposal indicates they would list anywhere from 442 to 475. The NAI proposal doesn't appear to me to suggest any listing range or anything. I don't have a preference either way, but
It was appraised, Madam Chair, as well. I don't know if that figure,
what was it appraised at?
I, Madam Auditor, do you have that?
400 and some, I don't remember exactly.
Is that a number we want to give in public?
It's public
meeting?
record, wasn't it?
If
I
it's
gave
gonna be
it to you, I
listed
think, when it was
publicly.
appraised.
Yeah.
I don't know. I suppose it depends.
I don't find anything. This gives me the property, and that's okay.
I'm not worried about that.
That's
I
the
think
Dunham
there's some
one.
interest.
There was another NAI. I don't know where they, did you find that, Madam Chair? NAI?
Yes,
Did you?
You did?
I sure
Marcus
did.
something is his.
You're a magic lady. I mean,
Oh,
okay.
It's marked as Lincoln
Marcus
County
Malin.
RFP
Markin
response.
County RFP, okay.
Third one down.
Mullen.
Third one
Mullen.
down, there we go. I can get Dunham's.
Yeah, that's this one.
I think
RFP.
NAI is a present
Disposition.
substantial.
Oh, this is the one, oh, there we
It's
go.
not like we have to sell it right away.
All right. Thank you.
Give it to Madam Chair, I suppose. I don't know if it does.
This is the one.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I don't know if you're looking for a motion to get us moving on. Move that we contract with NAI, this Marcus who had presented, reach out to him to have a contract drafted and solicit his services for liquidation of this property.
Second.
Thank you. Sean, will you call the roll, please?
He just stepped out. Madam
Commissioner
Chair.
Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins.
Yes.
Don't look at me. Commissioner Landine.
Yes. Motion carries. Now we're circling back to item 15. Commissioner Poppins, you had Terry come back in.
Terry, did you get a chance to identify, sorry, you're gonna have to come up to the mic, the area in which you need to protect for the not transfer stations, highway shop?
All right, we did have some soils testing done on that area south of the shop. They said the levels were slightly elevated, but they said it's well within the parameters of normal. They said some of that might be because it's a low area anyway, because it builds up with, it's not a salt, but it's whatever ground nutrients that are in there that are typical for low areas. So I guess to me, I don't know if, just to cover ourselves, I don't know if you'd want to keep just a slight portion of that area. Just
When you
in
say
case.
slide, 30 feet, 60 feet?
Well, I mean, I think, I don't know. How many acres is that? 38 something?
It's 38 something, I don't
I don't
remember
know.
off the top.
I don't know if you'd keep 10 acres of it down there. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I just,
I mean, is it just to protect a buffer, or is it actual
Yes.
for growth?
it'd be for a buffer. And again, I think the reason that we purchased that was two items. For the event that we ever had to take over townships, so we'd have room to grow. And then the other item was the 4-H grounds. So and 4-H grounds are that's been taken care of. I think the township issue that still might be, I don't know, in the future that might be, I don't know, maybe a viable thing that comes down to us yet.
So, tell me, I have a question for him a second. So if we replat off the, Toby, not John, sorry. if we replat off the 40 acres on the very south, does that retain a eligibility for that 40 acres?
Well, you would assign it, whichever.
There would be
whichever
something
day.
else.
Correct.
Thank you. So if there's 60, if we kept 28 of it, that would be more than, or 20, whatever over 40 acres would be a large enough buffer, you think? Terry?
I would think so. So our shop area currently is 25. Is that what it sits on, I believe?
Yeah,
You know, so you're looking to go, what, 15 more?
be about
Keep
15
with the shop,
more.
something like that?
I'm just coming
I
up
would-
with a number at this point.
I would
that-
agree with you, yes. I would, because I think we may need something there.
So, Madam Chair and Board, I would have, like us to consider platting off the southern 40 acres of it, which then we would assign, because it shouldn't be eligible for building eligibility, and get that platted, surveyed out, and get that on the market that way, so.
Isn't that total plat there, isn't that like 62 acres? So if
Something
you're
like that,
doing-
yeah.
Well,
So
if we currently have 25, I mean, if you're taking,
is it 60, it was 68, we have 25?
68 is the total
Is
acres
that-
on that?
3, so we had 43? Is that all that's on that southern portion?
I have no idea. I would have to look on the parcel
33
browser.
remaining. 62 minus, 68 minus 25.
33? Is that all that is there?
No, I did that wrong.
Does anybody remember what our lease, what we write that lease for?
That's
For-
40, that's 43. 43 remainder.
I got into my computer, I quick
It's
do a
65.
The total is 65?
0.4.
And we have 25 of it currently used?
I believe that's what we're sitting on currently, our footprint.
So there's only 40 acres additional there to speak with now already? Looks larger than that.
Can we still give it an eligibility?
Sure. Just trying to make it a farmable piece, yeah.
$20?
That's 20, someone said?
Well, but I think that's not the whole dirt pile. You need to go down further. Because you got the dirt pile south of where the ponds are. We got those two dirt piles. We got a clay pile and then down about right there.
Terry, do you see in the future that you're gonna need any of this property?
Like I said, to me, I think the only additional space we would probably need would be if we ever had to take over townships and if we wanted to incorporate them all into one central location.
I thought that was part of the argument for the size of the shop that we put up was to be able to take over township roads
I don't,
already.
I don't think Mr. Williams would concur
agree
with that
with you.
statement, yeah.
Yeah, well, Mr. Williams got a heck of a nice shop up there for the county. I would hope that was planning, that was the intent of the taxpayers, that we were getting ready for that inevitable facet coming. Otherwise, we spent a lot of money for,
So how many acres do we have here that we're talking about total?
who did the,
We got what, 20,
we're
25?
utilizing 20?
You were using about 26.
Is that what the blue line just showed?
So why not offer 20 acres and keep 6 for,
Can we do this, Madam Chair, without it officially being paid? The Highway Department shop, is it, are all the bonds and everything paid on already?
No, the bonds, but this, I would disagree. This money will end up going back into the highway shop, or highway fund, that is generated off the 20 acres, so.
Okay.
So there is my motion. I would move that we plot off 20 acres on the very southern part of this, assign a building eligibility through our planning and zoning office, and market it in a similar fashion as we just did on the
I'll
other.
second that.
Thank you.
Toby, can we do that?
Yes, when you submit the plat, we'll just assign an eligibility to it.
Okay. Any further discussion from anybody?
This is marketed and
This is a highway shop.
As we did on the transfer station.
okay.
It is parcel 098.49.21.DA00. So there's a motion, to authorize an appraisal.
Oh, it is, we need to surplus it.
Yep.
We need to surplus it, plat it, surplus it. Yes, thank you for the clarification.
So the motion is to plat it and surplus it, or we just plat it first?
We
So
can't
we'll-
do it in the same motion? You're recommending not to?
You're going to have to do one plating first, surplus.
So we have a
So
description.
we will just plat I remove my motion. Alternative motion is just to plat the 20 acres and assign an eligibility to that 20 acres.
And then you wanna put it on the agenda?
And then we'll put it back on the agenda for the next meeting to surplus, so.
Okay.
Okay,
Sorry, Madam Chair.
is there a second to that motion?
Mr. Gibbons had the second.
I had the second last time, so I guess I'll take the second again.
Okay, so with that correction, all right. Sean, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins.
Yes,
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes.
jumping around, Madam Chair, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Golden, is there any update on the old DOT building as far as ability to move forward at all on that?
And which parcel is that?
That is the 200.50.15.200.
Okay.
My recommendation on this one is we do a quiet title action
Okay,
and just settle it once and for all. That'll probably take several months to get done because I'll have to notify everybody, give them enough time, and then set it for hearing.
I don't think there's any alternative to it, so I would move that we do so.
Second.
Do we need a motion on that?
You don't? You're gonna do,
No.
you,
Yeah,
okay, well, I will track my motion then.
and Commissioner Aaron's, you retract your second? Thank you. Now we're gonna talk about the south portion of parcel, no, never mind. Parcel 200-1323-010. Where's that
This
located?
is adjacent to the old highway shop. Yep. We utilize it right now for automobile storage and a little bit of storage. It's just a property that if we are going to move forward with a lease on some other space, we may not need this, but. I'm
For the
asking.
moment, we definitely utilize this space because it's the only access to the old weed shop, the building directly to the north side of that property. So we would want to keep that for the moment for sure, unless we choose to sell that shop and everything, and unless we have, until the day comes that we have an alternative place to store equipment, we're definitely using it for
So
both.
that- So that corner, the .010, what are we using that? It doesn't look like it.
010, yes. Well, that is basically the access to the building directly to the north side.
They would need to be together if they move.
Yes, they would need to be
So-
combined. It must be easier to sell the east side of .009 than to sell the last digits of .010.
I wouldn't recommend that we split them. We either move both of them. Do you see, though, if we are able to succeed in building a facility on 30 acres somewhere else, that we're going to need this facility after that?
Well, for the moment, it's divided into two portions, the building itself, and half of that will definitely be probably resolved with the new structure out at the new court site, if that moves forward. The other part would be my equipment storage. That would be, I need to have something in proximity to this building for snow removal equipment and whatnot. I guess I would prefer that we have a solution before we were to sell that for my needs also.
So in the long term, it will be just a matter of equipment for the courthouse storage? It seems
Correct.
like a large parcel for that, so.
So it's got all the emergency management storage in there, their trailers, their generators, and then my stuff. And that's half of that building, and the other half is the sheriff's department. Yes,
And this stuff can't be done out at the highway shop?
I guess that's a question for Harold and Terry. Some of that Harold has could be stored in other places. I would speculate, but I wouldn't want to answer that for them.
I guess I'm just looking at all properties, and this is one of our properties. You're saying that you would like to hold it. I can honor that, I guess, wishes.
You know, for instance, another resolve for Harold's issue would be as we move forward and we have more ag buildings built at the new 4-H facility, some of Harold's equipment could be stored there. But we do not have a solution at this point. Ideally for me, if we at some point tear down the old jail and we even just a small little building, I just need a small structure for what I need. That would be better for me if it was closer proximity than 3 blocks away from here. But, so yes, I see this as being a property that was very likely, it would be the best move for the county to surplus and get rid of it, but we just aren't there yet. Okay.
Madam Chair, I'm good with that.
Okay.
No motion.
No motion
Move
on that
forward
one.
Past those two.
And, all right, so that took care of 2 of them, and then we have parcel 240.28.76.1000. Where's that one?
We've surplus, I remember that. We have not got it appraised.
Is that the T?
That's that T, 154 acres.
We surplused it, but we have not authorized an appraisal, is that correct?
I do not believe so.
That is correct.
So I'd like a motion to authorize an appraisal,
So moved, Madam Chair.
appraisal and sale, I should say. Is that your motion, appraisal and sale?
Correct.
Thank-
Second.
Thank you. Sean, will you
Can-
call the roll? What?
Are we setting an appraisal committee, or are we authorizing a certain agency to appraise this?
Well, let's authorize the appraisal and then we'll talk about that. Can we do that?
Yes.
Sure.
Sean, will you call the roll?
Commissioner Aaron's?
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon?
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins?
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt?
Yes.
Commissioner Landine?
Yes. Who's going to, we gonna hire somebody to do an appraisal or are we gonna do it?
I think we need to hire somebody.
Okay,
I would concur with that.
all right.
The questions then, Madam Chair and Board, is do we want a shacket, which we have used at the airport to do an appraisal, or contracts, as this is commercial property, 3 or 4 commercial agents and do that. I would actually prefer shacket because then they're independent and we can list it, which again would be my recommendation with a firm, whether it's NAI or someone else. They don't have a preconceived idea on or insight into it. So.
Do we need to do an RFP or anything like that for this?
Isn't it a professional service?
I would think so. Okay,
But it will cost us probably $8,000 to $10,000. I want that to be on the record, or we can simply, again, have an RFP for, like we did at the transfer station. Can we utilize that at all as an appraisal? No, we have to assign them.
What did Joel Westra do for us? That wasn't 8 to 10 grand.
No, they do it for free.
Oh.
Well, I think they did it for free.
I don't have an invoice from them.
It's just the level of, just like, you can have your real estate agent that you're gonna use to sell your house, you get 3 of them, they're completely, what their opinion is versus what an official appraiser will try to use the data somewhat.
so we wanna hire Shackett? I mean, what do we wanna do, guys?
If we did an RFP for the properties that you wanted to list tonight or today, and say we need an RFP for these 3 parcels with an appraisal, do they do that?
We still have to assign the people that are going to do the appraisal.
Like there's a formal yellow book appraisal that Shaggett will do. If you were just some guy off the street though and said, I wanna sell my 60 acres here at the corner, you can just go to NAI or whoever.
Yeah.
And they'll do the work for you. It won't have an appraisal. It'll just be a comparative market analysis or broker price opinion.
So we should have Shackett do all three of them?
No,
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 no.
I wouldn't do an appraisal at all.
I
But I'm not,
think we need to.
I mean, I'm not opposed to it. I mean, I think they can get it done.
If we're going to do an appraisal on any of them, I would say it would be this one because of the high value that the site has potentially.
Commissioner Aaron's, I kind of agree with you on that. If we did an appraisal, there's an additional fee of $10,000 or $8,000 to $10,000. And I believe that real estate certainly can give us a pretty close price tag as to what that property would be worth.
It's my understanding we have to get an appraisal, or at
Yes.
least get a.
Yeah, I think that's where we're kind of stuck. If I had my own druthers, I wouldn't do one, but the county or the
We
state
have to do an
rules
appraisal.
require it.
And a real estate person can't do that.
Taxpayers.
So we could do that for free.
Yeah,
Yep.
we could, three of the board members could go and appraise it. And then contract with NEI or whoever we would choose to sell it. It's just how accurate the three taxpayers are gonna be is the only thing I have a question about.
Well, Commissioner Poppins, with the amount of land that you have, been involved with, I'm comfortable with some of your opinion on that. We could get two other commissioners, save some money, hand it to a real estate person, and
So who wants to be on the taxpayer committee? Commissioner Poppins, I'd like you to be on it since you are
I'll
familiar with
volunteer.
land prices. Who else? Commissioner Aaron's,
I'll do it.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Sure.
thank you.
So then we're gonna do an RFP for the realtors to.
realtor, yep.
sell it. Okay.
Yeah,
And the RFP is just for this T area land?
correct.
We'll need a new RFP for this one.
Wouldn't you wanna do them all three? Oh, you're right.
This is the only one that. All right, moving on. Item 17,
Do you need a motion on appointing those three?
do I need a motion to appoint okay,
So
motion.
moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you,
Second,
thank you. Sean,
Commissioner Aaron's,
yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
Vote no. Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes,
Commissioner Landine.
yes.
I think,
Do we need a motion to authorize the RFP as well?
Yes, well, yeah. Let's do that too.
so moved, Madam Chair.
Second,
Thank you. Sean, call the roll, please.
Commissioner Aaron's,
yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes,
Commissioner Landine.
Yes. Now we're moving on. Julia,
Great. The first item is to approve an additional civil deputy state's attorney position for the state's attorney's office per last meeting's conversation.
yeah, we did talk about this last week, and I think there was a consensus to go ahead and do this. If there's not any further discussion about it, I guess I just ask for a motion.
So move.
second.
Any further discussion? If not, Sean, will you call the roll?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes,
Commissioner Landine.
Yes. Motion carries. Item 18. Julia?
Next is to hire Matt Wilson as a full-time deputy sheriff for the sheriff's office at $23.11 per hour, effective the 19th of July.
You're on 19, right?
You're on 19.
Sorry.
New
yeah.
hire in the sheriff's office?
Yes.
All right, well, we're on it, so let's take it. Is there a motion?
So move.
Thank you. Thank you. Sean?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
yes,
Commissioner Landine.
Yes. Item 18, proposal of process for appointed board and committee vacancies.
Sorry about that. This is a process for your consideration as commission on how to handle any vacancies going forward for the two boards. Collectively, I don't know, Sherry, if you want to tee this up or not.
You got it.
Okay. Essentially, the auditor's office and human resources got together. We also consulted the planning and zoning director along with the highway superintendent and got their input as well. This is more so just to get everybody on the same page, individuals in the public and then department heads and commission alike. And it follows what we do right now for seasonal employees. So the department heads will contact human resources, let them know of vacancies. The human resources department will work with the auditor's office along with the commission to make sure that it's advertised. And then you, 5 collectively, will interview the individuals.
So does this apply to people wanting to be on planning and zoning?
Yeah, yep, for both boards.
So it would change what we've been doing then. So now, what we've been doing is whoever's district it is goes and nominates a person, and then we float their name to this commission and we vote on it. That's not gonna be the process anymore, is it?
It will be a little bit more formalized, yes. So it would, again, follow what we do for more of the part-time individuals because they are currently considered employees. So as we drafted, and of course there can be changes if you'd like to see any, but the individual would essentially put in a letter of interest to the Human Resources Department. Once the position closes, I would distribute them to the commission, and whomever you deem necessary to meet with those individuals would meet with them like you're doing right now. But just so we have a formalized process in place so everyone's on the same page going forward.
Oh, why? I'm just thinking out loud here. Are we making them employees? But they're not employees. Are they? Aren't they just getting a stipend
Aren't they just appointed?
and appointed? I mean,
Appointed thing, we're gonna.
Yes, maybe.
I don't,
Definitive answer.
I don't think they're employees.
So I think you'd done a poll and throughout the state, half of them are considered part-time employees or employees, and the others are basically consultants, treated that way, and it gets a 1099. So actually, what we were looking at was, there's one way or another, they have to be, the income that we pay them, whatever it is, has to be reported for tax purposes. So we can do a 1099, or we can treat them as employees. And traditionally, it's been as employees. So there's a split in the state as to how it's done. So it's, do they fit all of the requirements for being a paid consultant? You can make that argument. There's some problems with it when you go down through the criteria. They don't meet all of them because
Right.
They're not traditionally an employee in the traditional sense, but there's some way we have to report the income for taxes. And so that's really where we're coming down for, do you do it as an employee or do you want to do it as a paid consultant? One's a 1099, one is being reported for.
But this policy is gonna apply to everybody, like we just formed the courthouse improvement committee. That means they'd all get rolled through her too, or the airport board. I mean, obviously, those are in the past tense, but under this policy, if we pass this policy today, how would that work tomorrow?
So, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to-
Or the weed board, or?
So today we're just discussing the boards. So the committees and the boards are two separate items.
Okay.
So for your committees, that would be handled through the commission's office. I wouldn't have any part of that process simply because they're not employees.
And then weed board, planning and zoning board.
Those
any
are
other
deemed,
board.
yep, those are deemed employees, yes.
Is there like a written policy you're gonna make and send to us to look at, or, I mean, I don't,
Yep,
like,
that's,
nothing's in.
was it attached in,
That is what I'm looking for right now.
I thought I
you had
attached it.
one, and I am not finding it.
oh, my apologies. I have it right here if we can do this.
So, so then these, I mean, they're subject to all of our rules, policies. How do they, does that, goes through that with them when somebody volunteers for one of these?
I do.
And that,
She just does the boards, the committees, she does it.
Yep.
It would just be the boards, because they do background checks on them and.
And that was kind of, I mean, to give you a little bit of back history, is that was the impetus, one of the impetuses of making them employees, is that somehow, some way, the commission decided to have background checks on these individuals. And
So-
so that was another reason why to deem these individuals employees as opposed to like a contractor.
I think I've worked on trying to find somebody to serve on the planning and zoning board for months.
yeah.
And, and it is difficult because when you explain briefly what they have, they tactfully decline that opportunity. So they got to go through background checks and all the rest of this stuff now if you're going to be appointed to a planning and zoning board?
They have been. The last couple did a background check. And I streamlined that process. And I worked with the auditor's office and Jim Gibbon through the last individual. So we have been doing it because, again, that was the direction I was given.
Is that just the background check where you submit their name to UJS and you get like the UJS report on them, or?
Yeah, it's a state background check. It takes typically less than a day to get the results back.
Okay.
If you don't want to do that, that would be an option too. Or if you have other options, thoughts? This is more so to get everybody on the same page. So again, if you would like a different avenue to go or a different direction, we most definitely can do that. I think during the last board appointee, there was some confusion, and so we're just trying to make it as simple as possible for everybody.
Well, I didn't think that the confusion with the last planning and zoning board appointment really had to do with background checks and all, and employee verification. I thought it was just multiple people applied. Commissioner Gibbon had already identified somebody, as was the past practice. Commission, as well as Commissioner Gibbon, just wanted to have some increased transparency. He held some interviews with each of these people. He came back, he nominated his person, kind of like the Senate or the president nominates and the Senate confirms, right? So kind of just basic level type stuff. I didn't think all that required us to identify these people as employees and report their social security and their background information. It just sounds kind of bureaucratic. Sounds like more work to do.
More of the backside issues, well, they are the backside issues, it's who's gonna place the ad, who's gonna do that, that's what this is, that's what we worked on to try to get that. It's not so much the interviews or the background checks, it was which department is responsible for advertising for committees, which department is responsible for advertising for boards. It's internal that you guys don't really see that
I
this
think
works
those are
through.
good things, don't you?
Mhm.
I mean, some of what you got up there is really good.
More turnout.
Advertising, vacancies, and all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think the vacancy thing, I mean, I think that's great. Advertise it so people can submit letters of interest or what have you, but I
Well,
don't.
and the problem came too is all of a sudden there's not a person there and it's like, oh, we have a vacancy with no, who's supposed to notify that there's a vacancy? How's it supposed to get started?
Yeah, who drives the process
Yeah.
essentially. So everybody was kind of sitting around, lack of a better word, trying to figure out, do you want to take this? Do I take this? Who takes it? And so it was all kind of up in the air. Where this is just a more
Well, it's
streamlined process.
planning and zoning. Why wouldn't planning and zoning drive that process? I mean, that seems like a really easy answer that makes sense to me. I'm confused. I just feel like this is complicating way too much. Less is more. I said that to somebody this morning. I don't know.
Yeah, just do the particular department can do the advertising and.
But it doesn't work like that. It's
Okay.
easier if we have it spelled out who does what, so that there's no confusion on if it's a board or a commission or, you know, whatever it is. This just makes sure that somebody isn't standing there going, well, I thought you were gonna do that. And just to say, just have that department do it, it's just not that easy.
Can we
You
do,
know-
can we do all that without this employee verification and background checks and all that?
Background check was this board's decision to do the background check. So that's not, we didn't put that in there and say, oh, we wanna do it. The
When?
board decided,
I don't-
I think a couple commissioners ago. And the
Okay,
no,
I was
no,
gonna
not
say,
you guys,
I did
You
not.
guys, no, I mean, a couple planning and zoning commissioners ago.
I mean,
There might be something
Yeah,
that
I
we can touch on later that.
it's tough enough to find somebody that wants to volunteer to be on a planning and zoning board.
I,
I mean, we got it, it's, I think I've gone through at least 4 individuals.
A lot of this is required, we do required anyway, because we advertise for them, and it's,
my,
don't read too much into it, we already do this, this is just putting it in words.
I think there's good stuff in here, but I wanna know what the definition of a committee is and a definition of a board.
Paid or
Because,
not paid. Committees don't get paid, the boards get paid. I think that's basically what we came down to, didn't we, Julia?
In short. I mean, I think I'm repeating, but what it's coming down to is we were trying to put together a formalized process. Again, I'm being redundant, based on what the commission has wanted and said from this year and previous years, based on what the department heads are saying, and we're just trying to all bring it together in a centralized location, because there was a lot of time spent where, to your point, Commissioner Landine, it didn't need to be spent. There was, it wasn't a simple process. We're just trying to simplify it, streamline it, and move forward. And if this process doesn't work, by all means, we just have to know what direction to take. And if you want the department head to take it, then we just have to let the department head know that, and then they'll have to drive the process, and they'll do that.
well, when I had in my particular district, that person was waiting to hear something, and, you know, that person didn't really think that he was gonna get a background check and go through this whole rigmarole. It was, hey, a phone call from me, hey, you've been appointed, end of story. But I don't know. It seems like a lot to me.
Commissioner Schmidt, Commissioner Poppins, is that how it worked in the past? You just,
We just picked somebody out and
told
we,
them to show up for work?
It was the discretion of the chairman or the district commissioner to pick somebody.
and we brought their,
Didn't have to go through scrutiny of anything.
yeah, you went through the board and you nominated whoever you had selected and the board voted on them and that was all. Pretty simple.
So you want us to take the background check and everything else off, and then that's
I don't
fine.
disagree with that they need to go through necessarily a background check, it's a different world. But out of the courtesy, excuse me, microphone, out of the courtesy of those that are elected, it was up to their discretion to find the appropriate person they felt would best serve their district, so.
I concur, Commissioner Poppins.
Yep.
So if you wanna ask, that's how I feel it should be. I'm okay with having a background check on it, but this is a person that the commissioner, who has been elected by its constituents to represent them. One of his or hers duty is to then select an outgoing board position that needs to be filled, so.
So when there's a vacancy, would you like to advertise for the vacancy, or?
Again, that can be up to the discretion of
Okay.
that commissioner. They may need to advertise because they don't have somebody and they want to maybe fill up, but again, it goes back to that commissioner's discretion as to what they need to do to reach out if they don't have somebody in mind. But again, that's the way I feel. I would emphasize the fact that it was the responsibility of a commissioner to go and select the best possible person to serve on that board. And it was the discretion of the commissioner to do that.
And the other commissioners respected their selection. And it was a very, pretty simple process and straightforward. So if you needed to interview all these other people, I don't think we need to make this as complicated as we need to. I like the old version myself. It put the responsibility on the commissioner to get the correct one.
Well, it does that, but if the commissioner can't find anybody,
Well, then
there
you
might be people out there. So I'm all for advertising for the letters of interest, because if you know somebody and you think they'd be a good, tell them to submit a letter of interest.
I don't disagree with that if the commissioner doesn't have somebody that they can find. I'm not saying that they can't advertise, if Commissioner Gibbon, again, presents somebody, he thinks that it's the best person for his district, I'm gonna support it, irrelevant to the application process. May or may not be as transparent as you think, but this is very transparent, that's the way I feel. It's up to the commissioner who answers to its constituents of that district to figure that out, so.
Okay.
Clear as mud, clear as mud, right?
So if there's multiple applicants, just in case we get inquiries too, if there's multiple applicants, then that commissioner in that district is going to handle it. Is that what I'm hearing?
If they advertise at all, yeah. Is that clear as mud?
Okay.
He or she, yep.
So basically, we won't do anything until we're directed to.
Great, that sounds great.
Stand by, wait for further guidance.
Yes.
And then when you ask us what the process is, we'll be like, well, what do you want it to be? So there'll
Well,
be-
that's what we've been doing.
I know, and it's,
But I think planning and zoning is who should be paying for the advertising. I don't know why that would run.
Yep.
Okay, sounds good.
done.
I don't know, it just, maybe I'm wrong, but that's my thought.
Okay,
Anyway, all right, so we got that figured out,
got it.
right?
Yep,
Sorta.
moving
Okay.
right along.
You wanna
And so we're
just have
moving, what?
Julia do 21 and then I'll go do 20?
Sure.
since
Yeah,
we
go,
got it
yeah,
split.
that's great, go ahead.
And then lastly is a drafted and updated drug-free workplace policy for county. And I attached it to the shared drive there. And this just has some verbiage indicating or including medical marijuana. And in short, it won't be tolerated during working hours. For your consideration.
So basically, it's just consistent with the state statute?
Yep.
Okay. Nothing out of the ordinary, didn't take any liberties, straight up consistent with the state statute?
Yeah. And I can give you more nitty gritty, but brass tacks, there it is.
Okay. Need a motion?
So move, Madam Chair.
Second.
Thank you. Sean?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes.
Thank you.
Sherry?
So you're probably getting used to me doing the quarterly reports, which was in your report file. Then I've got my quarterly adjustments that need to be done. So I attached the form along with the balance sheet, the current revenue on each of these that I'm gonna talk about. So I wanna do, the first one is transfer the budgeted cash from the general fund to the highway department in the amount of $1.9 million. And then the budgeted cash from the general fund to 911 for $150,000. And the budgeted cash from the general fund to the emergency manager for $25,000. And you'll see how I came up with the figures under the revenue pages. I took the cash transfer that you had budgeted for, less any overages of revenue that they've received so far, and then divided it by 2. And rounded it.
We need a motion on that, or you just did that?
Nope, motions.
Just out of curiosity, Sherry, that 1.9, that's a pretty big dollar amount. Was that like receipt of a grant or something like that?
This is, no, what this is in the budget process, you said that you would transfer $3.8 million to the highway department. So of that, I took the revenues that we've received in overages that we didn't budget for and subtracted it off the $3.8 million that we budgeted to transfer to them. I then divided that by half, rounded up, because we're halfway through the year, so.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay,
And that's what I did on all three of those separate ones.
and you do need a motion.
I do.
I need a motion to approve these second quarter adjustments.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Sean, call a roll, please.
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes.
The next one is easier. It's just automatic budget supplements. We've received task force overtime funding and must be Homeland Security funding. So I just need to do the automatic budget supplements on these two. They would increase the budget for the revenue and increase the budget for the revenue, or the expenditure. And these automatic budget supplements are done whenever there's a grant that we receive, but we do have to have motion that you recognize them.
I've heard the request. Is there a motion?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Sean, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes.
And the last one is to go ahead and be able to write a checks with the next pay meeting from the domestic abuse funds for Children's Inn, the Compass Center, and then Lincoln County share of it. I took the balance that's in the balance sheet right now, took the 10% out for the amount that we can hold for administration, divided the remainder by 2. We had the conversation last quarter that the money shouldn't sit there, so this is just transferring it out. I do have a budget hearing scheduled for the 10th to adjust the budgets on that, and this is why we're adjusting the budgets.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Sean, call the roll.
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. If that'll do it, I'd consider a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Got a motion to adjourn? Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Sean, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes. We're adjourned. Thank you.